The wonderful adventures of the Warhammer elf. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 151, Dragon Rider. No way, you are a dragon after all. Do you have to be so frustrated? Looking at the dragon scales stuck on his hands, Rohan looked at the two-legged fire dragon in front of him, covering his face with his forelimbs and retreating, and couldn't help complaining. But it is true that after all, it is just a mortal body without magic protection. It is already quite powerful to be able to withstand a slap from me who is possessed by divine power. After all, in the state of God's favored one, Rohan's physical strength has been infinitely close to that of God's chosen one, and the power of a slap is not much less than that of a crossbow. And the fact that the head can survive a slap from him shows that the physical resistance of this fire dragon is quite good. If Rohan is lamenting that the fire dragon's physical resistance is good, then this two-legged fire dragon can only look at Rohan in fear or even horror. She is just a child who was born in her teens, so she has no experience of fighting in nuclear wars with humans, or fighting with fighter jets. And this guy who is so scary that he doesn't look like a human can actually pierce his scales with a big fight. Are all humans in the past as scary as they are now? Do you know how much psychological damage a giant sniper that pierces through the scales can cause to a teenage dragon child? Raw. Feeling the pain of his cheek being torn, the dragon opened his mouth in anger, ready to burn the little guy to ashes with his proud flames. Looking at the dragon's body that had no magical response, Rohan excitedly summoned a magic shield, ready to test the strength of the dragon's breath. His requirements were not high. As long as the dragon's flame could make him feel pressure, it would be enough to use it as his mount. Looking at the blue magic shield on Rohan's arm, the dragon instinctively spit out a column of fire, although she didn't know what this powerful humanoid creature was thinking. The orange-red flames instantly engulfed Rohan's figure, which made the dragon's eyes flash with a hint of pride. At this time, she was constantly spitting out breath, but she didn't know that Rohan's face under the flames did not show any expression, and even had a hint of disappointment. He had hoped that this fire dragon would have some magic resistance or magic attack, but now it seems that it only has pure physical attack methods, which is not as good as those real dragons in Ulthuan. Since he had just arrived in this world, Rohan did not know much about the many characteristics of this fire dragon. He just felt that this dragon seemed a little weak. Could a world with modern technology be destroyed by such a weak fire dragon? No way, no way. The air was filled with the smell of burning gasoline. According to Rohan's speculation, the breath of this fire dragon should be able to reach more than 1000 degrees, but it should not be enough to melt steel. Is there no tanks and missiles in this world, and humans can only rely on pistols to deal with fire dragons? The more Rohan thought about it, the more strange it felt. Looking at the direction of the fire truck just now, he couldn't help but make a decision in his heart. Find a place with people later, and after collecting enough information and understanding the reason why this world was destroyed, decide whether to capture the fire dragon. After the breath lasted for 2 full minutes, the fire dragon slowly closed its mouth, looking at the charred land, and a hint of anthropomorphic smile appeared on the corner of its mouth. Sure enough, although she didn't know how the human had beaten her to a bloody mess before, it seemed that it was nothing more than that now. However, just when she relaxed her vigilance, a voice suddenly came from above her head, causing her golden dragon pupils to shrink sharply. The power is average, but fortunately the range and duration are quite strong, and it actually has an attachment effect, so it's not bad to be a temporary mount. Raw. After realizing that the humanoid creature was standing on top of her head, the fire dragon couldn't help shaking its head and preparing to shake the other party down. However, Rohan suddenly pulled out the top-grade silver sword from his waist and directly pierced the fine scales on the fire dragon's neck below, and warned with a voice full of magic, "Don't move, or I will kill you." Hearing this, the fire dragon's shaking head immediately stopped. Although she was a little confused about why she could understand the other party's meaning, the threat of death still made her succumb. Seeing the fire dragon lying on the ground with its head, Rohan put down the silver sword in his hand, then jumped off the dragon's head, curiously stroking the dragon's body and said, "Relax, I won't hurt you. I just want to ride you. Hey, you're still a little girl. Do you want me to help you check if your body is developing normally?" Woo. Looking at the long sword in Rohan's hand that could easily tear off the scales on her body, the fire dragon's eyes were full of fear and fear. In this era of food shortage, fire dragons that lack food will also cannibalize each other, and any fire dragon that is severely injured will be torn into pieces by its own kind. She doesn't want to risk being severely injured by Rohan's sword just to eat more meat. Rohan looked at the fire dragon that had already obeyed on the surface with satisfaction, and then jumped on the dragon's back again, preparing to do some basic manipulation exercises. He had seen those slave owners training newly born black dragons before. Although Rohan didn't know how to train young dragons, his magic power could quickly strengthen his tacit understanding with the fire dragon. This fire dragon is not that strong, but fortunately it is of good size and strength. It is perfect for bullying the beastmen and Norska who have no air defense. Although he only brought one dragon to the northern battlefield for support, at least it is acceptable in terms of face. At least it will not be criticized. Because the dragon's back is full of barbs, Rohan can only half squat on the dragon's back while guiding the fire dragon under him to cooperate with him, while secretly complaining in his heart. How did those female knights riding on the dragon's back do such a thing that pricks the buttocks? Did they stuff it in? Half an hour later, after pulling the horns on the dragon's head with the chain in the system space, Rohan patted the fire dragon's head and shouted, "Carrot, take off." Roar. The two-legged fire dragon, Carrot, let out a roar that resounded through the sky. It is not known whether it was protesting against Rohan's naming of itself, or expressing dissatisfaction with manned spaceflight. However, after turning his head to look at the serrated spear in Rohan's hand, Rohan finally chose to surrender, and obediently flapped his wings to fly into the sky. Woohoo, so cool. Looking at the ground getting farther and farther away, feeling the cold wind constantly brushing across his cheeks, Rohan felt for the first time what true freedom was. No wonder the Witch King likes to ride Seraphim in the mountains all day long to relax. This feeling of being able to see all the mountains is really too exciting. Ding. Congratulations to the host for successfully riding a dragon for the first time, unlocking the new feature, Dragon Rider. Chapter 152, Preparing for the Siege. Dragon Rider. Allow fire attacks. Dragon units gain physical resistance plus 15%, magic resistance plus 10%. Oh, so now I have armor penetration, magic attack and armor shattering, and also fire attack. Looking at the fire attack icon that appeared on the system panel, Rohan's eyes flashed with surprise, and then he looked directly at the serrated spear in his hand. Sure enough, under Rohan's control of his mind, a flame gradually burst out from the tip of the spear, accompanied by the high-speed movement of the bipedal fire dragon, as dazzling as a meteor across the sky. Roar. Sensing the flames on his back, Rohan couldn't help but let out a confused and uneasy roar, so Rohan hurriedly retracted the flames, pulled the dragon horn chain and comforted him. "Girl, calm down. We have known each other for half an hour. Would I hurt you again?" The magical comforting voice reached Rohan's ears, making Rohan roll his eyes. Although Rohan had given her a rebirth pill to treat the pain, the dull pain on her face was still unforgettable for her. "It hurts. It hurts too much." Looking at the carrot that had gradually calmed down under his crotch, Rohan slowly stood up from the dragon's back and prepared to try out the results of the half-hour run-in. Pointing his spear at a piece of concrete ruins on the ground, Rohan pulled the chain and shouted, "Breathe." Ang. After receiving Rohan's order, the carrot instantly dived towards the ruins, then suddenly opened his mouth and spurted out a column of fire several meters wide. The fierce flames instantly engulfed the entire ruins, and the high temperature of thousands of degrees even gradually melted the concrete ruins into magma. Looking at the ruins that were gradually collapsing below, Rohan finally showed a satisfied smile on his face. He finally had a flying beast of his own. Let's go to the world of Penda first to test your abilities. Kerala. Looking at the purple portal that suddenly appeared in front of him, the carrot spread his wings in fear and floated in the air, refusing to enter, no matter how Rohan persuaded him. "Rohan, who was angry, simply grabbed the chain on the top of the carrot's head and forced it to fly to the portal. At the same time, he patted her big head and shouted, "Okay, it's just a portal. The dragon won't die." Roar amid the reluctant roar of the carrot. Rohan still successfully drove the other party into the portal and brought the two-legged fire dragon to the world of Penda. With this two-legged fire dragon, Isabel's warriors will surely have a lot of luck. With the departure of one man and one dragon, the portal that kept tearing the space slowly closed. Except for the ashes in the vegetable garden, no one knew what had happened here. Penda World. Boshi City giants are throwing stones. Hide quickly. Damn it, it's been 3 days. Why haven't they finished throwing stones? Calm down, soldier. I'll heal your wounds. Although the 8-meter thick solid wall can withstand the terrible stones thrown by the giants, the soldiers stationed in the city are not so lucky. At this time, the city was already full of huge pits of all sizes. The indiscriminate attack of the stones directly smashed the houses of the people and the military camp into powder. Some Knights of the Radiant Cross were spontaneously treating the wounded, trying to save more lives from under the boulders. But after all, they were not the Sunny Iron Tower of the other world, and they did not have the ability to revive the people who were smashed into a meat paste, so they could only watch people die in pain unwillingly. It had been 3 days since Rohan left. In just 3 days, Isabel turned the entire Boshi city into a living hell. In the military camp, Isabel held the magic beam staff in her hand, looking at the giants who were constantly throwing boulders, and asked the captains of the Druki group beside her, "I plan to take this city before Law comes back. How are the siege equipment prepared?" The temporary siege tower has been prepared. The giants' attacks in the past few days have weakened the durability of the city gate a lot. The war hydra or the giants can smash it open with a light bump. The captain in charge of reporting looked at Isabel with a trace of respect, not because of her identity, but because of her outstanding performance in the past few days. As Druki, they originally looked down on Isabel, thinking that this human woman who knew some magic might give blind commands. However, after 3 days of contact, the captains were surprised to find that Isabel's command ability was actually quite good. More and more shields were set up at the forefront. The Teutonic Knights were sent out to plunder the surrounding villages, and even several siege towers had begun to be built. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. Isabel casually threw away the vanguard damage report in her hand, walked out of the big tent with a staff, looked at the giants throwing fireballs and asked, "How is the reconnaissance situation in the direction of Siouan City? I don't believe that the Bacchus Empire will stand by and watch us die. Their false emperor should have sent someone over, right?" The Teutonic Knights who went out to plunder did not find any traces of the Empire's large-scale army. There were only some sporadic Imperial patrols trying to stop them, but they were all solved. Knight Commander Aaron reported the situation hesitantly. After all, it was his fault that he did not find the enemy. 3 days was enough time for the messengers of Boshi City to rush to the surrounding castles for help. Even the garrison of Siouan City should have received the news. How could there be no movement at all? Looking at the Durachi troops who were on standby at any time and the somewhat tired Pen vassal army, Isabel could not help but sighed and said, "To be honest, I don't want to fight a siege at all. The cost of forcibly attacking the city is too high. I prefer to have a decisive battle with the main force of the Empire on the plains outside." The walls of the city of Boshi were too strong. Even after 3 consecutive days of bombing, the giants could only destroy the battlements on the top and could not cause much impact on the wall. The surrounding Durachi captains also knew this, so they all said willingly, "Madam, please let my troops take the lead. I will definitely lead the soldiers to take down the city wall in one fell swoop. This honor should belong to me. Madam, for my respect and love for Lord Rohan, let me lead the army to attack the city wall." "What nonsense are you talking about, madam? I only need to bring a few experts to climb the city wall at night and open the city gate." Because Rohan told them about his marriage to Isabel before he left, the captains all hoped to make military achievements and be rewarded when Rohan returned. After all, Dario's position as admiral is really too coveted. He has his own territory and military power, which can be called the youth version of the Lord of Terror. Chapter 153, Dragons Soaring Over the Continent of Penda. "Ha fam, do we have to throw stones here every day? I want to eat meat." In the open space next to the military camp, a dozen giants were igniting boulders soaked in kerosene, and then using slingshots to bombard Boshi City. Although the giants had a lot of fun at the beginning, after 3 days of continuous slingshots, most of them felt a little bored. Stop complaining. Everything we do now is to be able to eat delicious flesh and blood as soon as possible. Do you want to be shot by crossbows on the city wall? Looking at the brothers who were upset around him, Fam put down the slingshot in his hand, picked up a huge wine glass next to him and sighed. If it were really in the past, how could we have the opportunity to eat meat and drink like we do now? Wait until. Roar, what is that strange snake with several heads going crazy about? Hearing a strange roar coming from a distance, Fam, whose speech was interrupted, turned his head in a rage, and then subconsciously widened his eyes. The huge black shadow directly covered half of the city of Boshi. The Imperial soldiers who were hiding in the trenches hurriedly climbed up the city wall and looked up at the sky with confusion. What? It turned out to be just a dark cloud. How could this cloud float so fast? Exclamation mark. Under the city wall, a glorious cross knight was bandaging the wounds of a seriously injured patient, trying to save a young life. Suddenly, he noticed the terrified eyes of the injured person, and then a terrifying roar came from behind him, so he subconsciously looked up. I saw a giant dragon as big as a castle floating in the sky above Boshi City. Just by flapping its wings, it set off a gust of wind in the city. All the Imperial soldiers, including the nobles, stood there in a daze. Although there are various legends about giant dragons on the continent of Penda, almost everyone thinks that they are just fictional content. It was not until the giant dragon opened its bloody mouth and revealed its throat that was emitting red light that people realized for the first time there are really dragons in this world. Dragon. Along with the shrill screams of the glorious cross knight, the two-legged fire dragon, under the guidance of Rohan, began to spit out dazzling pillars of fire at the tower. The fierce flames instantly engulfed nearly 100 Imperial soldiers in the tower, and even the solid marble walls began to melt under the dragon's flames. In the castle hundreds of meters away, Governor Justice, who heard the noise, rushed out of the castle anxiously, looking at the fire dragon destroying the wall in the air and muttered, Damia, have you really abandoned the empire? How could he know that the goddess of harvest had never given up the Bacchus empire from beginning to end, but unfortunately met the more powerful lady of the mist? Seeing the city wall slowly melting under the dragon's flames, the surrounding Imperial officers finally reacted and shouted to the stunned soldiers around them, we can't let that dragon destroy the city wall, otherwise Boshi City will be finished. Prepare the crossbows. Crossbows in place. Wow. However, how could Rohan watch the crossbows ready? Before the Imperial gunners approached, he had already commanded Luobo to destroy those crossbows. Luobo swung her tail in the air and smashed the crossbows on the city wall into a pile of sawdust, and then used her breath to spray the surrounding Imperial soldiers who tried to stab her with spears into ashes. Looking at Luobo, who was killing people everywhere, Rohan was not to be outdone. While using soul quenching to attack the approaching Imperial knights, he instructed Luobo, remember Luobo, if you encounter this kind of siege in the future, you must pick the big ones to fight. Pick the big ones to fight? Luobo, who was originally preparing to continue attacking the city wall, immediately stopped and thought for a moment, before shifting his sights to the inner castle with a trebuchet not far away. This should be the biggest one, right? Looking at the completely destroyed city gate and collapsed city wall, Luohan looked at his own army outside the city that was attacking Boshi City, pulled the chain and said, you've had enough fun, so let's go say hello to your mistress, and then go back. Roar. As soon as she heard that she could go back to the world of Fire Dragon Empire, Luobo immediately flapped her wings excitedly and flew to the Black Dragon banner camp. She hadn't finished eating the ashes she left in the vegetable garden, and she couldn't wait to go back to save food. Look, that dragon is flying over. It's Lord Luohan, Lord Luohan's dragon. In the camp outside the city, the Durachi warriors looked at Luohan on the back of the dragon in the distance, and they all waved their weapons to celebrate. In the long history of the Dark Elves, every elf who could become a dragon rider was a powerful warrior who could establish a great reputation. Although Rohan was only riding a two-legged flying dragon, the breath that was powerful enough to burn down the city walls still made all the Durachis fascinated and crazy. In front of the big tent, Isabel, leaning on her staff, was looking at Rohan flying in the sky with love, and at the same time she was glad that her decision was so wise. If she hadn't met Rohan, she would probably still be the naive princess who knew nothing about the world and became a plaything of other princes, right? Just when Isabel thought that Rohan would come down to say hello to her, he suddenly grabbed the chain on his hand and shouted to her, "Lisa, pay attention to the direction of Solian territory. A large number of cavalry are coming." Hearing Rohan's shout, Isabel was stunned at first, then turned around and shouted to the captains who were still watching the dragon, "Blow the horn quickly, all troops are ready to fight back." "Yes, ma'am." The captains of the Durachi also reacted quickly. Since the troops had been assembled in advance, the Dread Spearmen and Silver Mist Guards quickly came to the entrance of the camp and formed a shield wall. However, the reaction speed of the penned vassal army was much slower. Even with the members of the Knights Order commanding them, some soldiers still rushed out of the camp without taking their helmets in time. Just as the soldiers were gathering, a huge army of tens of thousands of heavily armored cavalry had already appeared at the foot of the mountain in the distance. Through the telescope, Rohan on the dragon's back could easily see that the cavalrymen were wearing red plate armor and robes, and the horses under their crotch were much stronger than those of the Imperial cavalry. They were cavalrymen from the fierce Lion territory. It's hard to imagine. It's only been a few days. Even Britannia can't muster such a large number of heavy cavalry in such a short time, right? Looking at the red knights all over the mountains in the distance, even Rohan, who claimed to be knowledgeable, couldn't help but sigh, and then patted the dragon's back and said, "Rohan, these cavalrymen don't have long-range weapons. You can spray them however you want, but remember, pick the big ones." Chapter 154, Reinforcement. On the remaining walls of Boshi City, Governor Justice looked at the red knights who were slowly arriving at the battlefield in the distance, and shouted excitedly, "The reinforcement from Sarlian are here. Great, the reinforcement are finally here. Boshi City is saved." "Why are they reinforcement from Sarlian? Where are the reinforcement from the Empire?" Hearing Governor Justice's shout, the surrounding soldiers cheered, and only some nobles looked at the Sarlian army with suspicious eyes. After all, although the current Bacchus Empire and Sarlian are in a state of peace, this does not mean that the relationship between the two countries is very harmonious. Decades ago, the founder of the new Bacchus Empire, General Osa, almost captured the Solian capital, Solian City. Although General Osa chose to withdraw his troops because of the invasion of the snake cult, their ancestors killed many Solian nobles at that time, and they did not believe that Sarlian would forget this history. It is easy to invite gods, but difficult to send them away. How could Solian help the Empire to attack the elves' army for free? Looking at the cavalry all over the mountains in the distance, Rohan did not ask Luobo to attack immediately, but asked her to lower the altitude and prepare to observe the situation. He had a little understanding of the relationship between the 5 countries on the continent of Penda, and naturally knew the contradictions between the Empire and the Sarlian. Nothing will happen without profit. Although tens of thousands of cavalry look spectacular, do they really dare to attack the elf troops with giants and flying dragons? Although he came to Penda as an invader, he did not think that the 5 major countries with many contradictions could really be united in facing the outside world. Sure enough, the Sarlian cavalry in the distance did not choose to charge immediately, but instead sent a knight carrying a white flag to run towards Rohan. Looking at the giant dragon suspended in the air, the Sarlian knight suppressed the trembling warhorse under his crotch, raised an envelope and shouted loudly, "I represent the wishes of King Ulrich, and come to negotiate with the honorable elven lord." Roar. As soon as the voice fell, Luobo roared at the poor knight, and instantly frightened the warhorse under the knight's crotch to kneel on the ground. The roar that resounded through the sky made the horses of the Solian cavalrymen in the distance restless, and no matter how much the knights tried to appease them, it was useless. A 2-legged fire dragon is also a dragon, and the dragon's might is not something that ordinary horses can withstand. Looking at the giant dragon slowly landing in front of him, the Red Knight knew that this was a show of force, so he could only jump off the horse in embarrassment, and his clumsy appearance made the elves laugh out loud. Hearing the laughter from afar, the knight's face under the helmet was full of red, but before he handed over King Ulrich's letter, he heard Rohan ask with some disdain, "I'm curious, where do you get the courage from the Sarlian to intervene in the war between the elves and the Empire? Is it just relying on your mere 10,000 cavalrymen?" In the past, Rohan might not have dared to make such a big talk, but now that he has a giant army and flying dragons, he is not afraid of these cavalrymen at all. It won't be long before the whole of Pendor is in his pocket. Why waste time signing some bullshit agreement? An agreement without strength to support it is just a piece of waste paper in the toilet. Hearing Rohan's undisguised ambition and ridicule, the Red Knight finally showed a trace of anger on his face. If his strength allowed, he really wanted to chop Rohan with a knife. However, after looking at the giant dragon blowing hot air in front of him, the Red Knight finally obeyed his inner thoughts and only threatened verbally. The Solian realm cannot watch the elves slaughter humans. I think the elves should not want to be enemies with the entire Pendor, right? King Ulrich is kind-hearted and is willing to divide the territory southeast of Pendor into the territory of the elves, and at the same time sign a non-aggression treaty and trade agreement with the elves. The territory southeast of Pendor? After sliding down from the wings of a carrot like a slide, Rohan suppressed his smile and took the envelope from the Red Knight's hand. He could see that this Solian king named Ulrich was simply a human dregs. Almost all the land in the southeastern border of Pendor belongs to the Bacchus Empire and has nothing to do with the interests of Solian. It's a nice idea to cede the land that originally belonged to the Bacchus Empire to him at the expense of others, and to test the bottom line of the elves at the same time. In front of the Red Knight and everyone, Rohan didn't even look at the perfumed envelope in his hand, and then shouted righteously, "Go back and tell your king that you used chains and towers to imprison our compatriots. Now it's time to pay the price." This is of course a lie, but justice of revenge is always better than war of aggression and colonialism, isn't it? I will convey everything you said today to His Majesty the King truthfully. As if shocked by Rohan's declaration of justice, the Red Knight saluted Rohan slightly and then led his weak warhorse back to the army. After all, it's not just 1 or 2 days that the nobles like to imprison the older elves as toys, and some family heirlooms have been passed down for several generations. Now these cruel elves who came from nowhere come to avenge their suffering people, which is at least justifiable in terms of morality and law. After a while, the Red Knight returned to the army of the Solian territory and reported the negotiation situation to a middle-aged noble, dressed in gorgeous plate armor. After looking at the giant dragon in the sky and the giants attacking the walls of Boshi City, the noble decisively chose to lead his troops to withdraw from the battlefield. Obviously, the noble who led the troops was not willing to send his cavalry to support the empire in order to save an imperial city that was about to fall. Traitors of mankind. Looking at the Sarlian territory cavalry slowly withdrawing from the battlefield in the distance, Justice on the Wall could not help but roar, and then continued to fight. The imperial soldiers on the walls of Boshi City had already been in a bitter battle. More and more giants began to cross the walls and easily destroyed their phalanx. At the same time, because all the crossbows were destroyed by the dragon flames, the imperial soldiers who lacked counterattack means could only try to besiege the giants with spears, dividing and besieging them by relying on the size difference. The initial battle was indeed quite effective. Several giants who lacked tiptoeing had their souls and calves pierced, and they barely retreated to the barracks under the cover of their brothers. Seeing that several giants had fallen to the ground under their siege, a knight hurriedly shouted to encourage them, "Keep chasing and drive the giants out of Boshi City. The elf army is coming." However, just when the soldiers thought the situation would improve, the elf army and the Pendor vassal army, without the threat of the Solian cavalry, joined the war. The massacre began. Chapter 155 Helicopter. Boshi City is burning. With the departure of the Solian Legion, the Imperial soldiers, who were already on the verge of collapse, were completely unable to resist the elven army that was swarming in. All the Durachi warriors joined in the bloody slaughter, and with Rohan riding the dragon and spewing flames, this city with a 1,000-year cultural heritage was on the verge of destruction. In this chaos, the Teutonic Knights who received the order in advance rushed into the libraries located in various parts of the city, knocked out the librarians inside, and raised the black dragon flag symbolizing Rohan. After all, what is stored here is the crystallization of wisdom passed down for thousands of years on the continent of Penda. Even if it is used as a collection, it is better than destroying it directly. Looking at the city below that was constantly emitting flames and screams, Rohan nodded with satisfaction, and then patted Carrot's head and said, "It's over. It seems that we are not needed here. Let's go back." Raw, looking at the purple portal that appeared again in front of him, Carrot, who was already familiar with it, couldn't help but roar excitedly, flapping his wings, and taking off again. After 2 hours of continuous fighting, she was already starving, and she didn't know if the ashes she left in the vegetable garden were still warm. The fire dragon's action instantly attracted the attention of everyone in the city. Looking at Rohan on the dragon's back, and the portal suspended in the air, the Dorichus, who already admired the strong, couldn't help but cheer loudly. "Lord Rohan, I wish you a safe journey. Cheers to our great expedition, Lord Rohan. Rohan, Rohan, Rohan." Amid the cheers of his fanatical fans, Rohan waved to the soldiers on the ground, and then disappeared into the portal. Fire Dragon Empire World. Beep beep beep. A somewhat shabby helicopter was circling over the vegetable garden. Looking at the vegetable garden with billowing smoke below, the female pilot turned on the intercom and reported, "Vanzan, this is Ali. We found a burned vegetable garden. There should be a big guy nearby, and there should also be a large survivor camp." Vanzan received it. "Be careful and alert. Those big guys can't give up such fresh ashes. They must be ambushing around." Ali received it. "The Archangel is ready, and can start hunting at any time." Another man's voice came from the intercom. From the conversation between the two, it is not difficult to guess that they have successfully carried out several dragon hunting plans. In the backseat of the helicopter, 3 members were nervously watching the helicopter. They are the Archangels. The once glorious paratroopers are useless in front of the dragon, so the desperate humans have developed a new tactic. When the helicopter successfully attracts the dragon's attention, the first Archangel acts as bait to attract the dragon's attention. While the dragon was chasing the bait, the other 2 Archangels took the opportunity to move out, following behind the dragon and standing by at any time. When the triangular array radar on the ground captured the signal of the fire dragon, the 2-meter Archangel behind the dragon launched a huge net at the dragon, trapping the dragon's wings and causing it to fall to death. Although this tactic has a very high mortality rate, and even the helicopter has the risk of crashing, it is the only way that can be thought of in the absence of ammunition. It's really stupid, but the plot is really like this. Carola, just as everyone was nervously looking around, a sound like a broken mirror suddenly came from the back of the plane, attracting their attention. Considering that this helicopter was created decades ago, the faces of several members became nervous instantly, and they couldn't help but ask anxiously, "What's that sound? Ali, is there something wrong with the parts of the aircraft?" Impossible. The readings of the instruments are all normal, and I also performed routine checks before taking off. There can't be a problem. WTF. Ignore the damn instruments. Just look behind. Just as everyone was anxiously checking the situation, a crew member suddenly widened his eyes, pointed at the back of the plane and shouted, "Quickly notify Vanzan, we are in trouble." Hearing this, Ali hurriedly turned the helicopter to check the situation, and at the same time, took out the walkie-talkie to report, "Vanzan, this is Ali. My god. Ali, what happened? A dragon. Vanzan, look up." Hearing Ali's irrelevant screams of fear, the armored convoy on the ground slowly stopped, and the American man named Vanzan poked his head out of the leading tank, and looked up into the sky. He thought it was just a new flying dragon, and was still wondering why Ali, a veteran pilot, was so out of control. However, when he looked up at the sky, he couldn't help but widen his eyes, and didn't even care that the precious cigar in his mouth fell to the ground. Oh my god. Looking at the huge purple crack in the sky, even Vanzan, who dared to fight the dragon head-on, couldn't help but feel panic at this moment. This drum force is obviously not human. Could it be a dragon, or an alien? Just as everyone was stunned, a giant dragon suddenly rushed out of the purple crack, and just met the helicopter in front of it. Looking at the helicopter so close, Luobo instinctively spread his wings, and prepared to use his claws to tear the iron box into pieces. Luhan once taught her to pick the big ones to fight. This should be big enough, right? Unexpectedly, Luhan, who was sitting on the dragon's back, directly grabbed the chain above her head and forcibly stopped her claws that were about to touch the helicopter. Through the glass window, Rohan slowly stood up from the dragon's back. He could even see the terrified eyes of a female pilot inside through the glass. Don't worry, this helicopter is a good thing. I have to find a way to pack it and take it back. After looking at the helicopter with covetous eyes like looking at a beautiful woman, Rohan pulled the chain on the top of the carrot head and forced the reluctant carrot to leave the vegetable garden. The existence of helicopters means there are armies, and the existence of armies means that there may be weapons factories in this world. After determining the technological level of this world, Rohan's goal instantly changed. His requirements are not high, as long as his army can produce breech-loading artillery and breech-loading guns that are better than those of the Sigma Empire, and improve his weapons level to that of Napoleon. After turning his head to look at the gradually disappearing helicopter, Rohan couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth. As long as he can find a factory or weapons expert that makes weapons, he can even temporarily put aside the task of the Witch King and give priority to occupying and conquering this civilized world. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 156 Alien Rohan. Looking at the flying dragon gradually going away, Ali recalled the strange man who had just sat on the dragon. She was so scared that she quickly turned on the intercom and said, "Vanzan, did you see that? There is a man riding on the back of the dragon." Riding on the back of a dragon? That's impossible. Scientists have tried to tame dragons before, but they all failed. Are you sure it's a man riding on the back of the dragon? Hearing Vanzan's question, Ali couldn't help but recall the faint light emitted by Rohan's body due to the living saint, plus the sharp ears and the beautiful face like an angel. That must not be an ordinary human. Could it be that these dragons that are almost destroying mankind are all the products of alien civilization? 20 years ago, when the main countries still existed, many scholars speculated whether these flying dragons were biological weapons made by aliens to destroy human civilization. However, after a series of wars, this speculation was gradually replaced by another theory, that is, these fire dragons were the culprits of the extinction of dinosaurs. Ali once believed this statement without a doubt. She also dissected and studied those giant dragons, and found that they only had one heart and two lungs. If one of them was lost, they would die. However, the purple crack that appeared out of nowhere, and the handsome man riding on the dragon's back directly shattered the worldview that Ali had always believed in. After hesitating for a moment, Ali turned on the intercom, and reported with a firm look, "That man can't be wrong. It must be an alien. Vanzan, we need to fight not only the leading male dragon, but also the aliens invading the Earth." After hearing Ali's report, Vanzan, sitting on the tank, looked at the silent soldiers around him, picked up the intercom and encouraged, "Oh, yes, so we will not only be dragon slayers, but also warriors against aliens. Whether it is dragons or aliens, we humans will never surrender. That's right, we will take back our home. Those dragons are just temporary residents. This world belongs to humans." The reason why these American soldiers crossed the ocean to the distant country of Yin was to be able to destroy the only male dragon entrenched in London, and save the world. Although they were very surprised by the appearance of the suspected aliens, they had already made up their minds to die, and did not mind having one more enemy. Just as everyone was preparing to continue on their journey, Ali on the helicopter once again brought good news through the walkie-talkie. "Vanzan, I found a castle with lights. It is not far from you. There should be a survivor camp there. This is really good news. We need more soldiers on the way to London. Maybe we can get reinforcement there." After hearing the good news, Vanzan excitedly stood on the tank, picked up an axe, and shouted to the people around him, "Keep moving forward, and be prepared for battle. If necessary, we will use force to temporarily take over the castle." Hearing this, the soldiers returned to the armored vehicles and loaded ammunition for the heavy machine guns on the vehicles, ready to respond to the next war at any time. A few dozen kilometers away, a forest turned to ashes. Hideous looking at the carrot in front of him that was constantly eating the ashes, Rohan couldn't help but step forward and pat her head with a real fatherly smile on his face, saying, "You are so easy to feed. Don't worry, as long as you follow me obediently in the future, I will have as many ashes as you want. Anyway, there will be a pile of corpses left after each battle. Instead of burning them time and effort, it is better to give them to these ash dragons as food. After all, giants like to eat fresh human flesh, and war hydras prefer beef and mutton. The leftover bones can be burned into ashes for dragons to eat. Perfect. Such an easy to feed war beast is simply the best mount to fight against chaos." As for chaos corrosion, Rohan has already made plans in his heart, as long as the dragons are sterilized in advance, and then ask the Mist Lady to bless these dragons, and finally make some dragon armor. Isn't this better than the royal horse vulture of Britannia? The only thing he needed to do now was to find those humans, to collect information related to dragons, and then try to plunder the technology of these indigenous humans. If he really needed to use tough measures, he could also choose to use assassination and conspiracy to usurp this world. After all, a world that can be destroyed by a fire dragon, except for nuclear weapons, may not have the conventional military strength of the Empire in Warhammer. Just stay here, don't move, Dad, I'm going to have some fun with those humans. After patting Luobo's head, Luohan took out a human skin mask and a bottle of potion from the system space and drank it in front of Luobo. Luobo, who was eating, suddenly raised his head and looked at Luohan's originally strong body in surprise. He gradually shrank, and even his height became much shorter, almost completely turning into a stranger. If he hadn't been able to barely judge that the yellow-haired boy in front of him was Luohan by the smell, I'm afraid Luobo would have eaten him up long ago. Looking down at his own body that had become the size of a big boy, the yellow-haired Rohan who had put on a human skin mask couldn't help but smile and murmured, "I haven't tried this body shape for a long time. I remember the last time I used this potion, it was to experience a new life with Isabel, right? This potion that can shrink the body is a favorite of Kane's assassins. They can use it to disguise themselves as various street kids, to eavesdrop and assassinate those who dare to disobey the Witch King." When Rohan was learning assassination skills from the chief mentor of Kane's assassins, Carl, he learned how to make this potion. Unfortunately, since this potion will reduce the user's strength when used, Rohan doesn't like to use this potion. However, although it can't be used in assassination missions, Rohan still developed a new way to play with this potion. A short separation is better than a new marriage. A few months ago, Rohan and Isabel took turns to experience the taste of this potion. It was also the first time that Rohan felt the feeling of crushing and being crushed. It's pretty cool. Forget it, the most important thing now is to find a way to sneak into the human castle. I'm now a minor human cub, what excuse can I find to sneak in? After shaking his head to get rid of the dirty thoughts in his mind, Rohan began to think about how he should join the human team. After all, in the wilderness that has become a wasteland, a child of unknown origin suddenly appeared. How about it? Thinking of this, Rohan's eyes slowly turned to Luobo who was burying his head in the ashes next to him, and suddenly he had an idea in his mind. How about using disguise? Chapter 157 Our Lady. Just as Rohan was thinking about how to blend into the human team, Vanzan had already forcibly occupied the castle not far from him. The children looked at the rumbling tanks and helicopters in the sky in amazement. This was the first time they, who were born in the wasteland world, had come into contact with the crystallization of human wisdom. The other adult residents looked at all this with complicated eyes, and were obviously uneasy about this newly appeared army. When the civilized order was still alive, the powerful naval forces of the United States once destroyed half of the dragons in the world, but they stopped when they were about to completely destroy the dragons. In order to reasonably plunder supplies from all over the world, those hateful pirates took the excuse of suppressing dragons and wantonly plundered half of the world's wealth. However, it was precisely because of this behavior of nurturing the enemy to protect themselves that those damn dragons had a chance to breathe. Not long after, those flying dragons returned to their previous numbers and even became larger and more numerous than before. Now another US army has come to the land of Yin country. Who can guarantee that these soldiers will not plunder them like their fathers did? But they also knew that it was like hitting a rock with an egg if they just relied on the rifles in their hands. After all, the best appliance in the castle was an old radio that had been used for more than 20 years, and the best appliance of the army on the other side was a helicopter. Looking at this defenseless castle, Vanson couldn't help but sigh to the tank drivers. It seems that not only the United States, but also the whole world has become a wasteland. I was hoping to find some parts. Don't dream. I dare say that Ali's helicopter is the last plane in the world. After all, we ran all over the United States to get one. Yes, 20 years have passed. How many scientists can be left in the burned Garden of Eden? I'm afraid that, even if we kill all the dragons, human civilization will have to start from scratch. After hearing the driver's rebuttal, even Vanson, who dared to fight the dragon, couldn't help but sigh. After 20 years, in this environment of lack of medical care and medicine, how many scientists of the older generation can survive? In an environment where most survivors are busy trying to survive, how many scientists can systematically pass on their knowledge to the next generation? Looking at the pessimistic team members, Vanson could only encourage these pessimistic soldiers. Don't give up hope. As long as the dragon can be destroyed, then mankind will have a chance to start over. Looking at the soldiers around him who were cheering up again, Vanson was about to jump off the tank when Ali's urgent call suddenly came from the walkie-talkie. Vanson, I found a dragon 20 kilometers away from the castle. It is spewing flames into a ruin. There must be survivors. I'm going to lead the dragon away. Ali, don't do anything stupid. Lead it to our triangular radar array first. Hearing that Ali, the helicopter pilot, actually wanted to save people, Vanson hurriedly advised through the walkie-talkie, but Ali didn't answer at all. She had already seen a little boy on the top of the ruins calling for help. How could she, a saintly woman, stand by and watch him die without saving him? There must be a saintly bitch in European and American movies. I don't mind if I have one too, right? However, Ali didn't know what kind of disaster her rescue plan would bring to herself and the entire human civilization. Seeing no movement on the other end of the intercom, the anxious Vanson could only angrily shout to the soldiers, who were exhausted from rushing, Ali, Ashley, damn it, everyone get in the car and prepare to fight. After receiving the order, the exhausted American soldiers had no choice but to return to the armored vehicles and prepare to fight the dragon again. 20 kilometers away, in the ruins. Fuck, such a stupid trick actually made someone fall for it. Looking at the helicopter flying towards the dragon in the distance, Rohan was full of surprise in his heart and couldn't help but think of the female pilot he had seen before. Could it be that the handsome appearance that he had specially chosen was even more important to those blonde waves than an entire plane? Could this be the legendary saintly woman? I've got it. Looking at the helicopter flying in the distance, Rohan hurriedly whispered to Luabo in a magical voice, remember, don't damage the helicopter, otherwise you will have to eat cold ashes for a month. Raw hearing that his future meals would turn into dry cold ashes, Luabo, who was spewing flames, couldn't help but choke on the smoke, and then hurriedly flew towards the helicopter. She was smart, but not much. Although she couldn't understand why Rohan wanted that iron bastard, she still followed Rohan's orders honestly. After all, compared to the earth, where people couldn't even get enough food, being able to follow Rohan at least had a mouthful of cold ashes to eat. Right, Ali, there is no triangular radar array here. We have no way to know the dragon's position reading. The dragon has been attracted by us. We must hurry back and let the child fend for himself. The archangels sitting in the cabin were already scared. Although they all had records of hunting dragons, they were all well prepared. Ashley seemed determined to save the child, so she shouted to her teammates who were begging behind her, shut up, do you want to let a child die? Let's go back to the castle immediately. Vanson should be ready. Oh my god, what if they are not ready? Looking at Ashley with anger on her face, the archangels could only suppress this sentence and silently pray whether Vanson was really ready. Along the way, Carrot caught up with the helicopter several times, but she just carefully put her head towards the helicopter, forcing the helicopter to speed up and escape. She remembered Rohan's warning. After all, it was like eating dumplings without fillings for a month, and you couldn't dip them in vinegar. This was really scary. The people on the plane were not having a good time either. The dragon's head approached the cabin several times, which scared everyone except Ashley. Fortunately, not long after, Vanzan's prompt came from the other end of the intercom, which made them feel relieved. Ali, the triangle array has been set up. You can prepare for the Archangel to hunt. Understood. As the helicopter rose, the 3 archangels jumped out of the cabin one after another, ready to hunt the dragon. Ali, who was supposed to report the data, left the triangle array without authorization after confirming that the dragon had been attracted away and ran towards the ruins where the boy was found earlier. The boy must be scared now, and she must take him to a safe place quickly. As for the reading, although there may be a few seconds delay due to being far away from the triangle array, she can still estimate the approximate data based on her past experience. In short, the child is the most important. Chapter 158 Blending in. Rohan, who had turned into a young boy, was sitting on the ruins, eating an apple, waiting for the rescue of the helicopter. The saintly female pilot was able to lead Luo away at the risk of being shot down by the fire dragon, in order to save him. She shouldn't abandon such a cute child in the wilderness, right? Sure enough, a small black dot gradually flew over the distant horizon. The helicopter actually came back to find him. I can really fall for such a stupid trick. Should I say that this female pilot is a saint, or should I say her? Looking at the helicopter flying in the distance, Rohan grabbed a handful of dust and applied it on his face, then threw the apple in his hand into the fire and lay on the ground pretending to be dying. In order to arouse the sympathy of the saint as much as possible, Rohan also found a burned male corpse from Grand Town in advance and placed it aside. A lovely orphan who had just lost the care of adults and was alone. What could be more likely to arouse the love of the saint than this? The helicopter slowly landed beside the ruins. After a while, a standard white woman ran out of the cockpit and came to Rohan anxiously and asked, "Child, how are you? Are you injured? Woo, am I still alive? Don't move, auntie will take you to a safe place." Looking at this poor boy covered with ashes, Ashley felt that the softest part of her heart was touched, and she wanted to take the child away from the ruins immediately. Rohan, who had been an apprentice of Kane's assassin for decades, also showed his acting skills. He looked at Ali with his big watery eyes and asked curiously, "Excuse me, have you seen the big brother who took me? He asked me to hide here and then ran away." Hearing this, Ali noticed that there was a burned body in the distance, so she resisted the pity in her heart, picked up Rohan and comforted him. "Big brother went to a distant place. Let's leave here first. Auntie will take you to a safe place." Then she held Rohan without any doubt and walked towards the direction of the helicopter, ready to take the child away from the ruins. Feeling the softness against his face, Rohan, whose vision was limited, could not help but twitch his eyes slightly. He really did not expect that he could sneak into the human team so easily. Are you so ruthless that you actually feel guilty and adopt a child of unknown origin? However, when he thought that such an innocent saint could be one of the local indigenous humans, Rohan's mood suddenly became much happier, and he even had time to take advantage of the opportunity to do something. With such a saint to cover his identity, his plan to usurp intelligence and technology would be much smoother. Ali, who was sitting in the cab, had a ruddy complexion. She only felt that her heart seemed to be touched by saving an innocent child. However, she did not react. This touch was actually both psychological and physical. Silent all the way, in the open space in the castle, looking at the helicopter that was slowly landing, Vanzan's face rarely showed anger towards Ali. Due to Ali's sudden departure, the 3 archangels who were parachuting in the air all lost their accurate coordinates and almost became the dragon's food. If the dragon hadn't left on its own initiative, the entire convoy in the castle would probably be threatened by the dragon. Looking at Ali who walked out of the cab holding a boy, Vanzan rushed forward, suppressing his anger and asking in a low voice, "Do you know that your behavior has threatened the entire army?" 3 experienced archangels almost became dragon's food just to save a useless child. Be quiet, Vanzan, you are disturbing him. Looking at Rohan, who was hugging her chest and falling asleep, Ashley showed a Madonna smile on her face, and then retorted without thinking, the child is the hope of the future world, not to mention that we have the ability to save him. We should not let him die in the wilderness. My god, Ashley, there are more than tens of millions of families in this world who have died tragically because of fire dragons. Do you have the ability to save them all? At least if I have the ability, I don't want to give up on one of them. Looking at the somewhat stubborn blonde Madonna in front of him, Vanzan resisted the urge to punch the other's delicate face. He turned his head angrily and growled, in that case, you can go to hell with this child. Next time, you are not allowed to act alone without permission. There was no way. As the only helicopter pilot in the entire army, Ashley's value was irreplaceable, so Vanzan had to swallow this breath alone. Seeing that Vanzan did not continue to make things difficult for her, Ali slowly breathed a sigh of relief, and then asked Quinn, who was waiting on the side, hello, is there a place to take a shower here? I need to take this child to have a physical examination. Ahem, of course, the water in our bathroom is connected to the underground lake, and we can use the boiler to heat some hot water for you to take a bath. Quinn looked at Ali's beautiful face in a daze, and then coughed a few times in embarrassment, and allowed Ali to use the bathroom in the castle. The truth is of course not as simple as he said. Due to the lack of fuel in winter, the boiler is usually closed most of the time, and there is only one opportunity for collective bathing every month. But in order to please these gorgeous female pilots, Quinn still agreed to their request. Maybe he could have a romantic encounter? After all, most of the women in the castle were old and pale because of fear, and Ashley not only had a hot body, but was also a highly skilled technician, which was too attractive to him. And he could see that after he agreed to her request to take a shower, Ashley's eyes instantly became much kinder when she looked at him. Coupled with the blush on her face, it was obviously the right time to take action. It was a pity that Quinn didn't know that not all efforts would be rewarded. After hearing the movement outside, Rohan slowly let go of the ball in his hand, rubbed his eyes sleepily, opened his eyes and asked, Auntie, are we safe? Ali, who was originally preparing to chat with Quinn, immediately shifted her attention to Rohan, which made Quinn very embarrassed. Looking at Rohan with dust all over his face, Ali once again hugged Rohan to her chest and comforted him with the radiance of the Virgin Mary on her face. Don't worry, we are safe. Let's take you to take a shower first. Look at how dirty you are. Oh, I didn't expect to be able to feast my eyes. Hearing this, Rohan immediately lay in the other's arms obediently. The gleam in his eyes made Quinn, who was not far away, a little suspicious. He always felt that there seemed to be something wrong with this child, who came from nowhere, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Forget it, maybe he was just scared by the dragon. Let's pay more attention to this child next time. Chapter 159, The Sorrow of the Virgin Mary. Rohan, wrapped in Ali's bath towel, walked out of the bathroom door refreshed. It should be said that, although the saint is good at pitting teammates, she still tries her best to meet the needs of Rohan, a poor little boy. Quinn, who was waiting outside the door, was stunned when he saw Rohan coming out of the bathroom, and couldn't help but ask, little boy, why hasn't Aunt Ashley come out yet? Auntie said she hasn't washed so comfortably for a long time, and she plans to wash in it for a while. Looking at Rohan's innocent face, Quinn put aside his worries, and then handed Rohan a pajamas and said, oh, so, then you go play with other children first, and I'll find you after uncle and aunt have talked about things. Okay, then I'll just walk around the castle. Looking at Rohan, who left with a well-behaved face, Quinn showed a relieved smile on his face, and then continued to stand outside the bathroom door, trying to talk to Ashley inside. On the other side, after changing into pajamas, Rohan did not really go to play with those peers, but took advantage of his size to start collecting intelligence. There were a lot of magazines before the dragon disaster stored in the castle, which gave Rohan a full understanding of this world. Unlike the Earth in his previous life, the continental plates of this Earth seemed to be only the size of Europe and America, and the total area seemed to be similar to the world of Penda. In terms of military, the technology of this world was very deformed. Not only did Rohan not have the missiles and cannons that he remembered, but he didn't even see a single soldier's bazooka. The only useful nuclear bomb was the kind carried by a bomber. Isn't this too outrageous? The Sigma Empire can use cannons to shoot down the magic dragons of Ulthuan, but you can't even beat this kind of flying fire dragon. What's your future? After resisting the twitch in the corner of his eyes, Rohan couldn't help but put down the magazine in his hand, holding his little head and shaking his head and sighing. I was originally hoping to get some airplanes and cannons to bring back to enhance the support firepower of the troops, but I didn't expect this world to be so lame. It seems that only the helicopter and the tank armored vehicle are the few technologies worth plundering for Rohan, right? Then Rohan picked up a magazine introducing fire dragons from the bookshelf, skipped the fragment introducing the origin of fire dragons, and browsed the characteristics of the activities. There were less than 10 fire dragons discovered in London at first, but in less than a year, tens of thousands of fire dragons swept across the entire country of Yin. In just 5 years, the whole world can detect the figure of fire dragons. The joint forces led by the United States have successfully wiped out half of the fire dragons, and victory seems to be at hand. Rohan looked at the introduction in the magazine with some surprise. If this magazine is not false propaganda, then this reproduction speed is too scary, right? Such a huge war beast that can reproduce quickly must not be allowed to be obtained by chaos. After putting down the magazine, the first impression in Rohan's mind was a picture of countless chaos warriors riding flying dragons everywhere. Don't be too scary. However, Rohan thought about it again. Aren't these flying dragons a powerful double-edged sword that can fight against chaos? As long as he has enough Tirachi nobles under his command, can he directly recruit a dragon cavalry regiment and sweep the entire chaos wasteland? It is not a dream. His magic dragons in Ulthuan are indeed powerful, but even if the princes of Caledon sing their voices hoarse, how many sleeping dragons can they awaken in a year? As long as he has enough Tirachi nobles, or even loyal knights from the world of Penda, he can create an unlimited number of dragon cavalry through Bloodlord's domination. When he thought of this, Rohan couldn't help but put down the magazine and said to Vanzan, who was trying to sneak up behind him, "Uncle, these fire dragons can actually develop such a huge number in such a short time. It's really terrible." However, as a steel straight man, Vanzan was not fooled by Rohan's disguised appearance. Instead, he pulled out the dagger at his waist and asked, "Since the fire dragon destroyed the world, I have never seen any children who can read magazines, let alone children as well nourished as you. Who are you, and who sent you? What are you talking about, Uncle? I just happened to pass by here." Just happened to pass by. How could Ali just happen to meet a survivor attacked by a fire dragon, just happen to successfully rescue the uninjured boy, and even just let you enter the castle? Vanzan walked towards Rohan step by step with a dagger. He didn't know what kind of fear he was facing, but he still walked towards Rohan confidently. He had already checked that there was no one near the library, which was a suitable place for interrogation. "Don't worry, although I don't know if you are an alien, I will pry off your nails with a dagger first, and then cut your thigh into meat strips." Looking at the confident smile on Vanzan's face, Rohan couldn't help but sigh secretly. What annoyed him most was this kind of self-righteous protagonist. Through the magazine just now, he has confirmed that this world should be the famous fantasy movie, Fire Dragon Empire. It's a pity that he hasn't seen this movie, so he doesn't know the direction of the plot, and doesn't know if he will miss anything good. I was going to see what these humans are going to do next, but I didn't expect them to come directly to die. Clang! A small fire phoenix suddenly appeared out of thin air, with smart eyes and tail feathers swaying in the wind, curiously looking at the terrified Vanzan not far away. Then, Vanzan saw Rohan suddenly take out various bottles and jars from the air, while muttering, corpse powder, I remember I should have brought it." Half an hour later, looking at Vanzan who was cut into pieces on the ground, Rohan put away his dagger with satisfaction, sprinkled the corpse powder on Vanzan's body, and then left the library. Not long after, the American soldiers noticed Vanzan's disappearance, so they broke into the castle and began to search door to door regardless of the residents' opposition. "Vanzan is missing. Do any of you know where he ran to? Damn, were they killed by the local survivors? Impossible, they don't have the courage. They must have hooked up with a female survivor, so they forgot the assembly time. Next to the helicopter, Ashley, who had come out of the bathroom, was sitting next to her with a ruddy face, letting Rohan rest his head on her thighs. After the fierce battle with Rohan in the bathhouse, and the disappearance of Vanzan, she has decided to temporarily stop the plan to destroy the Dragon King and settle the child in the castle first. Rohan, however, moved without any worries, relying on the halo of the Virgin Mary, pretending to be curious and asked Ashley, "Auntie, after we destroy the dragon, will we live in the castle forever?" "Of course not. When everything is settled, Auntie will take you to the base on the coast of the Sound Country, where there are some remaining scientists, which is the hope for mankind to rebuild the earth." "Oh, it sounds like a great place. So where is it exactly?" "It's in." Looking at this innocent Virgin Mary who unknowingly betrayed the future of her race, Rohan's mouth curled up a barely perceptible smile, and couldn't help but kiss her cheek. Looking at the beautiful smile on Ashley's face, Rohan couldn't help but smile on his cute face. He liked this kind of naive girl who helped him count money after being played with by him. Compared with the naive Isabel, this kind of saint had a special flavor. Looking at this saint who sold herself and subsidized the world's materials as a thank you gift, Rohan's heart was full of emotion. It is a great honor to meet such a saint. Chapter 160, Preparing to Slay the Dragon. Dario, can you introduce these new toys of yours to me? Yes, sir. By combining with Barclay's gunpowder technology, we have successfully created this powerful hand cannon, which is even powerful enough to penetrate the scales of a dragon. In an open space in the suburbs of London, Dario was proudly introducing the 90 Pender soldiers covered in heavy leather armor behind him. Unlike before, these soldiers did not carry any weapons that could be used for close combat, but instead carried small cannons with strange shapes. It looks like a smaller version of the ogre's lead sprayer cannon. How far is its range? Can it really be used against a dragon? Rohan walked forward curiously to check it out. Looking at these strange shaped cannons, it was hard to believe that they could penetrate the scales of a fire dragon. According to Dario, these hand cannons were made using the gunpowder of the Barclay Empire, combined with his own creativity. Although the range is slightly insufficient, it is enough to penetrate the shield and plate armor of a foot knight within 200 meters, and can even be loaded with shotgun shells to increase the coverage area. After learning that Rohan was going to conquer the dragon, Dario volunteered to bring his newly formed hand cannon troop to help, preparing to test the combat effectiveness of these artillery in actual combat. Looking at these soldiers holding large iron cannons, Rohan hesitated for a moment, climbed up along the back of Carrot and said, "In this case, you will go to London with me. When Carrot and I fight the dragon, you will be responsible for cleaning up the small dragons that try to get close." "Yes, sir, my artillery will satisfy you." Dario waved his hand excitedly. Originally, this weapon was still in the experimental stage. The reason why he had to wear full leather armor was to prevent the sparks that might occur during the firing from hitting his body. If it weren't for the fact that the City of Knowledge was taken down and the position of the City Lord was being selected, he would not have risked sending semi-finished weapons into battle. Rohan was naturally very clear about Dario's little thoughts and did not mean to blame him. After all, when he was a minor official under the Witch King, he often took his semi-finished potions or experimental products to seek credit and won many rewards. As a veteran, Rohan understood that the most fearful thing for direct leaders like Dario and Ange was not to be held accountable for minor mistakes, but to be forgotten by their leaders. After all, only those who often appeared in front of their leaders were more likely to be promoted. Roar! There was an excited dragon roar in the air. Rohan looked up at the sky with a satisfied smile on his face. A huge black shadow fell from the sky, accompanied by the earth's wail of being overwhelmed, and a carrot covered with a layer of iron armor came to Rohan. Although this set of dragon armor was made in a hurry, it was also forged by the elf craftsman day and night. In addition, the dwarf runes inlaid by Rohan made the death and snow weaker than ordinary dragon scales. "Carrot, we should set off. It's time to deal with your father and ex-husband." Roar. Hearing this, Carrot couldn't help but rub his head against Rohan's body affectionately. He could finally go back for revenge. Due to the lack of food, male fire dragon kings always randomly hunt female dragons who return to London to lay eggs and tear them into pieces as food. More than a decade ago, Carrot was still a fledgling flower girl. Her instinctive need to reproduce made her fly to London, ready to have a profound exchange with the Fire Dragon King. However, just after arriving in London, Carrot was unfortunately preyed upon by the Fire Dragon King, which frightened her. If it weren't for the fact that she flew faster than other compatriots, I'm afraid she would have been the soul that fell under the claws of the Fire Dragon King. Therefore, Carrot didn't have the slightest good impression of the Fire Dragon King who brought her into the world and wanted to eat her. If Rohan really had the ability to kill the Fire Dragon King, then she would raise both claws in approval. Holding a 4-meter long dragon lance forged from fine steel, Rohan tried to stab the dragon's back a few times, and then couldn't help complaining. This attack range is too small. Why does it feel better to bring a bow and arrow? Will the dragon riders of Ulthuan really use this as a means of attack? Putting the dragon lance into the system space casually, Rohan took out 2 bags of ebony steel forged javelins and placed them on the dragon's saddle, nodding with satisfaction. That's right. Who can be stabbed with that broken lance? It's better to use a javelin. Then Rohan patted the dragon's back and shouted to Dario and the Pender-hand artillerymen who were preparing to ride on the ground, follow the dragon and kill the dragon. London, suburbs. The once prosperous city has been burned down into ruins. Hundreds of small fire dragons no more than 30 meters in size are napping in the ruins, saving the little energy in their bodies. Most of the creatures on the surface have been burned to ashes by their ancestors, which also caused most of the newly born fire dragons to be malnourished. It is said that when you have enough food and clothing, you will think about sex. However, they could not even solve the problem of food and clothing. They had to be driven by instinct to come to London and transfer precious energy to the dragon eggs in their bodies. All the female dragons were lazily lying on the top of the ruins. Although the sunlight could provide them with little heat, it was better than nothing in this gradually cold winter. Roar. Suddenly, a roar of a terrifying dragon came from the mine in the city center, instantly waking up the female dragons from their drowsiness. It's over. That guy is hungry again. Whether it is the young female dragons who have not yet conceived, or the female dragon mothers who are incubating eggs, they immediately left their ruins and flew out of the city without hesitation. They knew that the next unlucky guy who flew slowly would definitely suffer. Boom, boom, boom. As expected, with a sound of climbing coming from the mine, a sturdy black dragon suddenly drilled out of the mine and spread his hundreds of meters wide dragon wings. A huge black shadow enveloped the entire city. Even the young female dragons who had just arrived in London reacted. This black dragon, who was both their father and husband, seemed to be coming with bad intentions. Roar. The black dragon was leisurely flying in the air, his eyes constantly scanning the fleeing female dragons below, preparing to randomly select a fat lucky one as food. After a while, he picked out a female dragon about 30 meters long, and then accelerated and dived towards the target, directly using his claws to tear the wings of the female dragon. Roar. The female dragon let out a painful wail, as if begging the black dragon to spare her life, but the black dragon still bit her neck and began to tear her flesh. Crack, crack, crack. The whole of London fell into silence, with only the sound of the black dragon constantly biting bones. After an unknown amount of time, the black dragon, who had eaten and drunk enough, slowly stood up from the pile of mincemeat and prepared to return to the mine with satisfaction. He knew that those female dragons could not resist their inner instincts. After a while, those female dragons would return to his side and become his food reserves and tools for reproducing offspring. Roar. A roar of female dragons came from the distant horizon, which made the black dragon flap his wings. After a full meal, he was in a sexual mood, and it was time to relax. After a while, the black dragon saw a female dragon with a body length of more than 80 meters flying towards him, which made him lick his lips with his tongue. It turned out to be a queen. The black dragon couldn't help shaking his tail excitedly. His targets had always been underdeveloped skin and bones. Now he could finally relax. Roar. However, it didn't take long for him to notice something wrong, and then he roared at the female dragon that was getting closer and closer. Why is there a man on your back? Chapter 161. The Flying Dragon Full of Treasures. After finally meeting a female dragon with a good figure, she ended up being ridden by a mere human. Any male dragon would not tolerate this. The person who came was Rohan riding on Carrot. He originally thought that there would be hundreds of fire dragons in London to welcome him, so he specially asked Dario and others to be ready for battle at any time. Unexpectedly, not only did he not encounter a large group of fire dragons, but he happened to meet his target, a male fire dragon. After pulling out an ebony javelin from the dragon's saddle, Rohan continued to gather the divine power in his body into the javelin, and in an instant, the black javelin emitted a faint blue light. Since we have already met, let's hurry up and end the battle. The black dragon noticed Rohan on Carrot's back, but he was full of confidence in his strong scales, so he suddenly jumped up from the ruins and flew towards Carrot. He wanted to rely on his body, which was a circle larger than Carrot, to burn Rohan on the opponent's back with dragon flames, and then forcibly tear Carrot's wings and take him down. Raw. Thinking of this, the black dragon, whose mind was controlled by desire, could not help but speed up the frequency of flapping its wings and flew towards the Carrot at a faster speed. Hearing the black dragon's undisguised violent roar, the Carrot, who was fighting against instinct, trembled subconsciously and immediately attracted Rohan's attention. Looking at the frightened Carrot under his seat, Rohan gently soothed the others back and then directly activated God's favored one and threw the javelin filled with divine power at the dragon. Although he could not understand the language between dragons, he could still feel the undisguised malice of the black dragon. This was clearly a plot to do something bad to his own white Carrot. Dare to threaten my dragon? Go eat shit. With Rohan's roar, the javelin filled with divine power turned into a blue meteor that streaked across the sky and pierced directly into the black dragon's chest. The black dragon, who had originally pounced on the Carrot like a wretched man, flew backwards in an instant, and the unrestrained violent divine power was constantly tearing his internal organs, making him scream in pain. Originally, Luobo was ready for battle. She was about to charge when she looked at the dragon blood floating in the air blankly and couldn't help blinking. Is this the end? Luohan looked at the black dragon slowly falling into the ruins with indifference. After pulling out another javelin, he patted Luobo's dragon back and said, "Land, I have never dissected a dragon before. We have a lot of work to do next." After hearing Luohan's voice, Luobo came back to his senses and began to descend with a happy mood, flapping his wings. On the other side, the severely injured black dragon began to fall to the ground uncontrollably. The severe pain made his limbs numb, and he could only barely open his wings to slow down his descent. Boom. Countless dust was lifted up by the fall of the black dragon, and the black dragon's painful screams came from the dust and fog. It was obviously dying. Luohan was not surprised by this result. After all, this black dragon was just a fantasy creature in the world without magic, and it could not resist Luohan's magic attack at all. Even if Rohan didn't make a move, with the bonus of Dragon Rider, Luobo could easily crush the black dragon with the toughness of the scales and the bonus of Fire Attack. But it was obvious that the silly and cute fire dragon under his crotch had not yet learned how to use the skills of Fire Attack. Forget it, I'll find a chance to teach her later. Not long after, the smoke and dust in the ruins gradually dissipated, revealing the broken body of the black dragon. The shiny black scales on the chest had long disappeared, replaced by a terrifying bloody hole, which was constantly bleeding. The once strong wings were also broken because of falling too fast, and it was obvious that there was no possibility of becoming the overlord of the sky. Seeing Luobo holding Rohan and slowly landing not far away from him, the black dragon's eyes were full of shock and anger, and he held on to the last breath in his body, ready to spit out dragon flames. When Rohan came forward, he didn't ask to kill Luobo, but he also hoped to turn Rohan on her back into ashes. Watching Rohan slide down the dragon's back and slowly walk towards him step by step, the black dragon's gradually blurred consciousness was full of anxiety. How he hoped that Rohan could come to his side cleanly and neatly, so that he could taste the joy of revenge as soon as possible. Hurry up, hurry up. The dying black dragon did not notice the teasing in Rohan's eyes. Seeing that Rohan stopped outside the range of his flames, he was still anxiously waiting for his arrival. It's a pity that the revenge he was looking forward to in his heart might never come. Dadada. Accompanied by the sound of horse hooves, Dario finally arrived with his experimental troops. 90 troops holding hand cannons dismounted and aimed their guns at the terrified black dragon. I'm waiting for my teammates. What are you waiting for? By the way, don't aim for the heart. I'm going to use that as all chemical material. Dario looked at Rohan, and when he saw Rohan nod in agreement, a grim smile instantly appeared on his face, and he waved to the soldiers, saying, "Ready, fire." One day later, finally the dissection is over. This is much more tiring than killing a dragon. Looking at the black dragon heart, that was as big as a millstone in front of him, Rohan couldn't help shaking off the blood stains on his hands, and took the rag handed by Dario to wipe his hands. Although Rohan's magic power could easily tear the flesh of the black dragon, due to the huge difference in size, Rohan had to let Radish tear the body in half before dismembering it. It must be said that after Rohan's careful dissection and experiments, he really found a lot of treasures from the black dragon's body. The first is naturally a large number of black dragon scales. After testing, it was found that, although these dragon scales could not be made into dragon scale armor, because they were a little fragile, the heat insulation effect was quite good. As long as it can be enchanted on the shield, it can provide good protection even against the breath of the dragon of Ulthuan. The second is the dragon tendons that have not yet been separated from the skeleton. According to Rohan's calculations, these dragon tendons can be at least several kilometers long, enough to make a slingshot for each of the giants. Finally, there are 2 fire-breathing glands in the mouth of the black dragon, which is also Rohan's greatest discovery. According to Ashley's dissection and research, she believes that the reason why fire dragons can breathe fire is because they can produce a kind of nitrogasoline in their bodies. Although Rohan is not clear about the direct relationship between nitrogasoline and gasoline, this does not prevent Rohan from thinking of it together with the dwarf's flamethrower. You know, Durachi has seized many dwarf flamethrowers in the long-term war with the dwarves, but they are all idle due to lack of fuel. If I can find a way to refine this nitrogasoline, can I make an Iron Dragon hand artillery youth version? Thinking of the fact that there are so many treasures on these fire dragons, Rohan's eyes changed a lot when he looked at Carrot. This is not a mount, it is clearly a treasure. Chapter 162, beginning of the experiment. After putting all the materials in front of him back into the system space, Rohan looked at the dragon heart in front of him, which was as big as a millstone, and couldn't help but feel troubled. It's not because he doesn't know how to use Bloodlord domination, but he doesn't know what to integrate this heart into. According to the records in the ancient books, when Isabel's ancestor, King Eric, made the crown of domination, he deliberately integrated black magic into the crown. This means that Bloodlord domination does not necessarily have to bind to the crown, but can also bind to other things. External objects such as rings or swords can also become the binding objects of black magic, such as the Ring of Guidance in his hand. But this leads to another problem, which is also the problem that Rohan is most worried about. What if his hand is injured in the battle and the ring falls off? Then what if the ring that controls the fire dragon falls into the hands of others? After all, it is not without precedent. Sauron and the neighboring Lord of the Rings world has warned him with a bloody lesson that such a precious thing must never be kept outside. But these fire dragons can't talk normally like giants. To put it bluntly, they are just some intelligent beasts. If they can't be controlled closely, it's probably difficult to domesticate them on a large scale. It seems that we need to use the ability of dream recall. Thinking of this, Rohan directly put the heart in front of him into the space, then took out a map of the country of sound, and threw it to Dario next to him, and ordered, "Save this map. You and your people go back to Grand Town first, gather the local nobles, and wait for my order." "Yes, sir." "Do you need me to notify the blacksmiths to start making dragon saddles and dragon armor?" After receiving Rohan's order, Dario suppressed his excitement, put away the map, and asked Rohan about the next arrangement. On the way to London, Dario had already seen the flying fire dragons, which made him immediately understand why Rohan suddenly ordered the creation of dragon armor. It seems that his lord wants to establish a Dragon Knight Corps. Of course, Radish will go back with you. Remember to inform the blacksmiths to make a slightly smaller dragon armor according to Radish's body proportions. Seeing Dario so sensible, Rohan was very pleased to open a portal. After giving some instructions, he patted Radish's big head and said, "You will stay in Grand Town during this period. Don't run around during this period, otherwise you may be captured by 4 very bad perverted uncles. Roradish rubbed Rohan's body reluctantly, but she still remembered Rohan's warning, and followed Dario into the portal obediently. Looking at the people who gradually disappeared in the portal, Rohan turned around with satisfaction, and opened a portal to the Albion continent, ready to concentrate on studying black magic. Chloe Empire, Imperial capital Rohan, wearing pajamas, was lying on the soft big bed in the queen's bedroom. It was not difficult to see from his stretched eyebrows that he was in a very happy mood. Because Lilith's previous invasion was too bad, Rajlia personally cast a spell to block the entire giant catcher world, covering it in her mist. Even the 4 gods of chaos and Lilith, who had been to this world before, could not see through the mist and discover this hidden world. Without the threat of chaos and potential assassins, Rohan could enter a deep sleep with peace of mind and conduct any experiments that violate common sense in his dreams. There is no concept of time in dream replay, so although Rohan only slept in bed for a few days, he has actually conducted thousands of experiments. The entire bedroom was empty, only the sparrows that were attracted by the living saint and landed by the window were curiously watching Rohan in the room. Success. Suddenly, Rohan on the bed uttered a low hum like a dream, then excitedly opened his eyes, got up and left the room. After months of dream experiments, Rohan finally found the most perfect enchantment material, that is, his own heart. Compared to enchanting the seal of Bloodlord's domination on external objects that are easily taken away, why can't he just put the seal on his own body? Anyway, with the rebirth pill as a backup, Rohan doesn't have to worry about his heart being taken away by others. After all, he can grow another one. According to the experiment in the dream, even if Rohan's heart is taken away by others, as long as Rohan can find a new one, the black magic spell will return to Rohan. Thinking of this, Rohan couldn't help but excitedly put on a black robe and ran towards the alchemy room. Since the castle has been expanded, and Rohan and Isabel are both mages, an alchemy room was specially built for the 2 of them to use. When he came to the alchemy room, Rohan took off his shirt neatly, revealing a perfect upper body filled with muscles, then cut his wrists, and began to draw totems on the ground. After a while, Rohan drew a somewhat crooked pattern on the ground, then took out the fire dragon heart from the system space, and placed it in the center of the totem. The dragon's heart slowly turned into a pool of blood, and merged into the totem. Flames like dragon flames slowly rose up, and one could even faintly hear dragon roars. Obviously, the black magic has begun to take effect. All that's left is to put one's heart into the fire. Okay, the next step is the most critical step. Damn it, I have to take painkillers again. Looking at the black dagger forged with ebony steel in his hand, Rohan swallowed a few rebirth pills and painkillers with a painful look on his face, and then stabbed his chest with the dagger skillfully. Puchy puchy puchy, because his physical strength was too high, he had to use magic to enchant the dagger in his hand, and at the same time, he had to swing continuously to cut his ribs. If someone entered the room at this time, they would be horrified to see a handsome elf stabbing his chest with a dagger like crazy. Damn, the physical resistance is too high, and the melee attack is too low. It's too torturous. How long will it take to chop like this? At this moment, Rohan couldn't help but feel a little regretful. Although he was able to successfully enchant the heart in his dream, he didn't expect that he would be stuck at the first step in reality. Because he was too afraid of death. Even though Rohan had turned off the living saint and various equipment, the blank data still had the terrifying melee defense. 88 and physical resistance. 55%. The creepy voice had already attracted the attention of the patrolling guards, but they didn't come in to check because they were worried about disturbing Rohan's experiment. What are you doing? Lady Misty's consciousness also noticed Rohan, who was chopping her ribs, and she had no choice but to show up and ask. Just now, her consciousness left on Rohan kept warning her, causing her to think that Lilith was here to cause trouble again, so she came to check what was going on. As soon as she entered the room, she saw Rohan stabbing herself. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. we cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 163, Dragon Heart. Seeing that Lady Mist had also come, Rohan hurriedly pulled out the dagger stuck in his chest and complained to her, "Madam, I plan to embed a rune in my heart, so can you please dig out my heart?" Actually, you don't have to be so troublesome. I'll teach you another way." Looking at the bloody marks on Rohan's chest, Rajlia couldn't help but frowned and threw out a holy light to fill the hole that Rohan had dug out with great effort. Hearing that Lady Mist was going to teach him personally, Rohan hurriedly put on his clothes and stood up, ready to listen to her lecture carefully. After all, Nagaran did not allow male elves to learn magic, so Rohan, who was blessed by the gods and gained magic power, had always been in a state of half understanding of this power. Seeing Rohan standing there obediently, Rajlia also picked up the teaching stick, willow branch, in her hand like a strict teacher, pointed at Rohan and said, "Show me how you use magic on a daily basis, and release a magic shield for me to see." "Oh, like this?" Rohan originally planned to release it by catching the system panel and the goddess blessing as before, and a faint blue light instantly condensed in the air. Unexpectedly, Rajlia suddenly hit the back of Rohan's hand with a willow branch, and then blamed him with some dissatisfaction. "If you want to be an excellent wizard, you must use your own power to release magic instead of relying on external forces, understand? But Nagaran does not allow male elves to learn magic. If the Witch King knows that I'm learning magic, I'm afraid that the Kane assassins will come to my door the next day." Looking at the red mark on the back of his hand, Rohan also cried out a little aggrievedly. After all, he has seen how those lords who secretly learned magic were cursed. Any male Druki who is found to be able to use magic will be cursed by Malekith with a terrible curse called Hollow Spell, and his soul will forever wander between the mortal world and the Chaos Realm. Rajlia had obviously heard about this before, so she took out a walnut-sized ball and handed it to Rohan, saying righteously, "Malekith only prohibits male elves from learning any magic of the Wind of Magic, but if you become my chosen one, you can use the advanced magic of the Mist system. So I can be your chosen one? Your recent performance is pretty good, but you think too much. There is only one position for the chosen one, and you are not qualified in terms of strength now." Rajlia made no secret of her disdain for Rohan's strength, which instantly caused Rohan to strongly protest. "How can you say he is weak? Although he may not be able to beat perverted players like Malekith or Tyrion now, he can still bully Alastair who can't use magic. Besides, you didn't choose me as the chosen one, so why did you talk so much just now? Are you wasting your energy on us workers?" Seeing the dissatisfaction on Rohan's face, Rajlia's mouth revealed a sweet smile, pointing to the ball in Rohan's hand and said, "Although you can't become a theology now, as my most promising believer, you can already start preparing for learning the mist spells in the future." Hearing this, Rohan realized that it was clear that he had been selected. Then Rohan focused on the ball in his hand. This was a small silver ball that looked like mithril and should have good magic conductivity. According to Ms. Mist, this ball should help me practice magic and lay the foundation for the future. But how to use it? Rohan curiously injected the magic power in his body into the silver ball, and then was surprised to find that the silver ball would actively absorb his magic power. Feeling his magic power constantly spinning inside the silver ball, Rohan hurriedly controlled his magic power and tried to control the operation of the magic power in the ball. However, after only half a minute, Rohan found it difficult to control the ball that was constantly shaking in his hand, and he even had to throw the ball away because his forearm was too sore. Ding ding ding. Looking at the silver ball rolling on the ground, Rohan's eyes revealed a hint of surprise, and then asked the smiling Lady of the Mist, "Madam, what is this thing? Why can't I control it for even half a minute? It's beyond my expectation that you can hold on for so long. You know, even Eltharion only held on for a dozen seconds at the beginning." Waving her hand to summon the silver ball on the ground, Rajlia first praised Rohan, and then proudly introduced, "Because the god King Azurayan does not allow us to interfere too much in the human world, the gods cannot directly guide the believers in the mortal world. He even burned the library of Hos for this." In order to avoid sanctions, most elven gods, including me, can only use indirect ways to strengthen their believers. For example, Lilith often gives the artifacts she made to the elves of Althon. Maslin will secretly add fuel to the flames when the believers are fighting. It was also the first time that Rohan heard the direct gossip of these gods, so he listened with relish, and then asked again, "Then, ma'am, do you rely on these silver balls to instruct believers by giving them fitness equipment?" It's not wrong to understand it this way. As long as you can hold on to him for 5 minutes, you can almost reach the level of an ordinary magician. Since she had already regarded Rohan as her own family, Rajlia's consciousness lay directly in the air and threw the silver ball in her hand to Rohan. Rohan took the silver ball thrown by the Mist Lady, and when he was about to try again, he suddenly noticed the pool of dragon blood on the floor that had turned into blood, and suddenly remembered something. Isn't his goal to make an enchanted heart? Why did he suddenly play with the ball? Putting the ball into the pocket of his clothes, Rohan hurriedly half knelt at the feet of the Mist Lady, hugged her thigh with his hands, and pretended to be pitiful. "Dear lady, you see that I can't master the skills of magic for a while. Can you please help me take out the heart?" At the same time, he felt the Mist Lady's big white legs without leaving a trace, and then hurriedly retracted his hand, and pretended nothing happened. Well, she is worthy of being a goddess. Her skin is smooth. Rajlia didn't seem to notice Rohan's hand, but moved her fingers and took Rohan's heart out of her body. Plop plop. Looking at his heart floating in the air, Rohan swallowed his saliva and then put the heart into the center of the altar in front of Rajlia, muttering, "VH9, #JDHR. He didn't know what he was muttering, but he knew that as his speech speed gradually increased, circles of bright red flames began to swirl around his heart. Not long after, orange-red runes appeared on the beating heart, and Rohan took out a stack of white powder with a complicated expression. I don't know why Western magic always needs this kind of thing, and I never thought that I would need to sprinkle salt on my roasted heart. As Rohan sprinkled the white powder on the heart, under Rajlia's strange gaze, a fragrant heart came out of the oven. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the characteristic, Dragon Heart. Chapter 164, Banner of Ashes. Are you sure this is black magic? Looking at the roasted heart sprinkled with salt in Rohan's hand, even Rajlia, who thought she was knowledgeable, felt a little weird. It's not a barbecue. Who would dig out their own heart and put it in the fire and then sprinkle salt on it? Are the steps really correct? Don't worry, there must be nothing wrong. Madam, please help me put the heart back. Rohan was not surprised by the Mist Lady's concerns. After all, the system characteristics have been given, and a battle flag has been given as a gift, which means it should be successful. Holding up this heart with an orange-yellow luster, Rohan showed a satisfied smile on his face. This is his heart, Dragon Heart. The soul and essence of the Ash Dragon King have been integrated into your heart. The owner of this heart will command all the Ash Dragons. Obtained item, Ash Battle Flag. When equipped, the whole army will get an additional 10 moral bonus. Looking at the heart slowly merging into his body and feeling the burning sensation in his chest, Rohan couldn't help but smile. Don't look at it as only 10 points, this is a moral bonus that can make the card next door +8 envious and cry. What's more, due to the faith bonus of Lady of the Mist, the Silver Mist warriors under his command already have extremely high morale. And this is a bonus for the entire army. Even the Pender servants who have never seen the Chaos Demon can bravely raise their weapons to face those terrifying Chaos Demons. Thinking of this, Rohan couldn't help but reveal a silly smile on his face. It seems that the chances of resisting chaos have increased by 1 point. Rajlia shook her head. She didn't know what Rohan was grinning about. She thought that the other party was so happy just because he completed an experiment. Just as Lady Mist was about to leave, Rohan suddenly hugged her thigh again, ready to take this opportunity to ask for some more benefits. Lady, I have a request. I don't know if I should say it or not. If you have something to say, please say it quickly. It's like this. In order to have a better chance of winning against chaos in the future, I tamed a kind of bipedal fire dragon with strong reproductive ability in another world. Once these fire dragons fall into the hands of chaos, the consequences will be disastrous, so I would like to ask you to bless them. Rohan also knew that his behavior today was somewhat excessive, so he hurried to finish his words and then obediently let go of his hand holding his thigh. After all, Lady Mist not only helped him complete the dragon heart today, but also gave him a silver ball for practicing magic. If he asked for a blessing again, it would be a bit ungrateful. But he believed that Lady Mist, who also lacked giant beasts under her command, should be very interested in these mass-produced fire dragons like him, right? As expected, Rajlia, who was about to return to the Temple of Iris, immediately became interested. She stopped and asked curiously, "Are those fire dragons you mentioned cooked?" "Those fire dragons feed on ashes. They can grow up to 100 meters long. There is one in Grand Town. You can go and have a look." Hearing this, Rajlia slowly closed her eyes, and a ray of consciousness instantly explored Grand Town in another world. Warhammer world. Grand Town in a dragon cave built specifically for taming flying dragons. Lobo was lying in the nest, lazily sucking the ashes brought by the servants. Since following Dario to Grand Town, he has lived a luxurious life with clothes and food provided for him. In the past, in order to survive, she had to gnaw on those unpalatable rotten wood ashes. If she could find a single skinny sheep by chance, she would be happy for several days. Now, she not only eats hot fruit wood ashes for every meal, but also has a special servant to bring her roasted fat sheep. In just a few days, her muscles have become fuller and her body has become bigger, with a faint posture of breaking through 100 meters. In the air, Rajlia was looking at the ash dragon with a scrutinizing eye, nodding with satisfaction from time to time. In her opinion, the strength of the ash dragon is not that outstanding. After all, they only have 2 feet, and it is difficult for them to compete with the griffins of Iris in air combat. However, with their huge size and fire breath that can melt steel, these ash dragons are fully capable of fulfilling the responsibility of air volunteers. It looks good. Damn, I'm tempted again. Because she had taken a fancy to Rohan's giant troops before, she promised Rohan to bless the giants. Unexpectedly, before she had time to bless the giants, another ash dragon that made her even more tempted appeared, which made her feel the torment of happiness and troubles. After all, blessing is no joke. For gods who rely on faith to survive, blessing is equivalent to sharing their own power with others. Therefore, every blessing must be done with extreme severity. It looks like I'll be busy next. I wonder if such a large-scale blessing will attract Ajuran's attention. Rajlia looked at the carrot with satisfaction, then controlled her consciousness to return to Albion, and said righteously, "This kind of war creature really cannot fall into the hands of chaos. I approve your request." "Thank you, ma'am." Rohan excitedly wanted to hug Lady Mist's thigh again, but Lady Mist suddenly pushed Rohan's head away and warned seriously, "You must be careful that similar incidents like Lilith don't happen again, and I will personally block the world you discovered and never let it fall into the hands of chaos." "Don't worry, Ma'am Mist, the fire dragon world will only be used as a world of behemoths to raise monsters in the future, and I guarantee that no dragon will sneak out." Naturally, he kept all the warnings of Ma'am Mist in mind, and then happily prepared to return to the world of Penda to summon his men to raise dragons. Watching Rohan disappear in the portal, Rajlia couldn't help but sigh and murmured, "How reckless. What would you do without me? Pend world, Boshi city alien, summon all the devout Teutonic knights. You will be responsible for taking care of all the giant beasts, including the war hydra and the ash dragon." "Sir, really?" In the Lord's Hall, Alien, who was summoned by Rohan, was full of surprise. He couldn't believe his ears. Even Anj and other Darachi leaders standing aside looked at Rohan in surprise. It was hard to imagine that Rohan would give such an important task to humans. They had witnessed the power of the fire dragon in person on the battlefield, so they all hoped that Rohan would give them this honor. Looking at Alien with a dull face, Mordred couldn't help but smile and patted his shoulder, reminding him, "Why are you still standing there? Those elf masters are looking at you with jealous eyes. Do you want to refuse this honor?" Chapter 165 Development Arrangements. After hearing Mordred's reminder, Aaron finally reacted and knelt on one knee in front of Rohan, swearing with fanaticism in his eyes, "Follow your orders, sir. We will sacrifice our lives and treat those dragons as our soulmates. I hope you can do what you say, my dragon tamers." Looking at Eren kneeling in the audience, Rohan smiled and nodded with satisfaction. The surrounding Durachi leaders were full of doubts in their hearts. They didn't understand why Rohan would give such an honorable and important position to humans. Dragon Tamer, what a noble position. To have the opportunity to accompany fire dragons for a long time, and even to have the opportunity to become dragon riders. They also hope that one day they can ride a dragon to soar into the sky, just like the dragon riders of the legendary kingdom of Kalada. However, Rohan actually gave this opportunity to the weak human servant army. Is this good? This is not good. Noticing the confusion of his subordinates, Rohan did not intend to explain. He couldn't say that he did this because he didn't trust them, right? Although these Durachi warriors all swore allegiance to Rohan, in the final analysis, it was because of his appeal as the Lord of Fear. Therefore, the primary object of loyalty of the Durachi elves was not Rohan of Grand Town, but Malekith, the Witch King of Nagarand. After all, Rohan has been practicing magic at the request of the Lady of the Mist, and once this is discovered, it will inevitably cause hostility from Nagarand. Even if Rohan can explain that his magic power is blessed by the Lady of the Mist, will those fanatical followers of the Witch King believe his explanation? You know, in order to achieve the unity of politics and religion, and unify the large number of Cain followers in Nagaroth, Malekith has declared himself to be the chosen of Cain. If the Witch King really wants to attack him, then except for Dario and those who followed him at the beginning, I'm afraid everyone else will betray him. Under this premise, how could Rohan give the precious dragon cavalry positions to those who joined later, the Druki? But the Teutonic Knights are completely different. At present, their strength is only slightly stronger than the chivalrous Knights of Britannia, and they seem to be very weak. But as long as Rohan can unify Penda, he will gain the loyalty of millions of Penda warriors, enough to become Rohan's source of soldiers. Even the monkey-like Holy Grail Knights blessed by the Lady of the Mist are not impossible. The most important thing is that compared to the Druki elves whose loyalty is not absolute, these Penda soldiers only swear allegiance to Rohan himself, which is more legitimate than the direct line. Go and gather your loyal knights, Eren. If you think you can get the recognition of the Fire Dragon, then you can choose one as your mount. Thank you, my majesty. The Teutonic Knights will not let you down. Under the envious gaze of everyone, Eren could no longer suppress the smile on his face, and recognized Rohan as his lord from the bottom of his heart. Looking at the commanders around him, Rohan slowly stood up from his seat, and made a promise to them. Those who have not received the reward don't need to worry. As long as you can make enough achievements on the battlefield, you will also have the opportunity to get an Ash Dragon as your mount. Long live. The commanders took the promise without hesitation, and prayed from the bottom of their hearts that Rohan could live to be 10,000 years old. Who can refuse a handsome and generous lord? After suppressing the noise of the crowd, Rohan took out a list again, and explained the current situation to everyone. Although we did not lose too many troops after 2 battles, we need to arrange garrisons to garrison the city of Boshi, so we do not have enough troops to launch the 3rd attack. Hearing this, the commanders who were still excited immediately calmed down and began to think about how to expand the troops. At present, they have successfully captured 2 large cities and controlled dozens of villages, almost taking over half of the empire. However, due to the long-term war and the attacks of the snake cult, the number of people under their rule is only about 80,000, which is simply not enough to feed the existing 12,000 Penda servants and giants. Although they can obtain short-term logistical supplies from the grain and grass world through the portal, this is not an expedient solution after all. Looking at the many commanders who were lost in thought below the stage, Rohan couldn't help shaking his head and asked Isabel beside him, "The conscription order of the Witch King has been issued. I can't keep wasting my time on transferring grain and grass. Is there any good way?" "Well, my life magic can speed up the growth of food, but I can't handle any government affairs during this period." Isabel was also a little helpless. She has only practiced life magic for a short year, and can only roughly inject the vitality of the earth into the soil to speed up the growth of plants. And the Lady of the Mist obviously won't waste her divine power for these trivial matters. She also has her own things to do. Besides, she has left her divine power to revitalize the land, and it is impossible to waste more divine power to control the growth of plants. How about we disarm? Don't be silly. Cillian has expressed hostility towards us. We shouldn't take the initiative to weaken our combat effectiveness now. What should we do? The whole Penda continent is at war now, and we have no way to import food from other places. The commanders fell into a quarrel, and just when they couldn't make up their minds, Mordred, who was watching the excitement, couldn't help but interrupted. In fact, you don't have to quarrel over food. It will be autumn in 4 months. Solian is the largest grain producing area in Penda. You can go to Solian to plunder. As a mercenary, he has already traveled all over the Penda continent, and he is naturally quite familiar with the customs of various places in Penda. On this continent where there is only war, there are Rogue Knights wearing heavy armor and lances everywhere, which is also the reason why the Penda people are full of martial virtues. The good iron ore and various rare mineral deposits that can be seen everywhere allow the poorest refugees to afford an iron sword for self-defense. Under such a background, no bandits dared to rob villages, where everyone is a soldier, which also allowed the inland towns of various countries to develop with peace of mind. As the usurper, heir of the ancient kingdom of Penda, Cillian naturally controls the most fertile land and mineral deposits in the entire continent. However, no matter how strong they are, can they be stronger than elves and dragons? As the saying goes, if the neighbor stores food, I will store guns. In wartime, the neighbor is the granary. Chapter 166 Dragon Tamer. With the solution given by Mordred, Rohan handed over the control of the continent of Penda to Isabel, and then returned to the Fire Dragon world, with the knights selected by Eren. The time has come, and he must hurry to train the mass-produced dragon cavalry, and take them to receive the blessing of the Lady of the Mist. Fire Dragon World, London. The female dragons who once escaped from the hunting of the Black Dragon King have returned to London, and are now circling around a huge skeleton. They really didn't expect that. They only went out to hide for a day, and when they came back, they found that the only husband of the whole tribe was gone. Roar. The female dragons were restless. Without a unified leadership and the instinct to reproduce, hunger began to fill their brains. They all knew that the winter without the sun was coming, and they had to find a way to replenish enough energy to survive. Not long after, a hungry and thin female dragon took the lead in launching a sneak attack, biting the neck of the female dragon next to it, and biting the other's neck. Roar. Seeing this, the female dragons nearby followed suit, and attacked their fellows, trying to cannibalize them to get enough energy to survive the winter. Some female dragons who failed to act were immediately betrayed by their best friends, but they could also pull their best friends along with them in their counterattacks before death. In an instant, the whole of London fell into chaos, and thousands of ash dragons of different shapes began to fight each other. Stop. Suddenly, a majestic voice like thunder came into their minds, and all the dragons subconsciously stopped fighting. Some ash dragons that had successfully eaten meat tried to disobey the voice in their minds, but with waves of pain in their brains, they finally spit out the meat in their mouths helplessly. All gather on the ground. Obeying the command in their hearts, the ash dragons could only land on the ground helplessly, and then they noticed that hundreds of humans had gathered on the ground at some point, and the pointed ear in the lead exuded an inexplicably familiar feeling all over his body, just like the former Black Dragon King. The visitors were Rohan and the Teutonic Knights who came with him, and their purpose was to tame these ash dragons. Seeing the heroic appearance of the fire dragons up close for the first time, all the knights were trying their best to suppress their emotions. Even Eren asked excitedly, "My lord, this is..." "Yes, these ash dragons are the ones you need to tame next. You must reach a cooperation with them in the shortest possible time." Rohan slowly walked towards the fire dragons that landed on the ground. Many fire dragons immediately surrounded him, and smelled the smell on Rohan curiously. It smelled so good. Unlike the aroma of food, the smell on Rohan's body could not only soothe their restless hearts due to lack of food, but also make them clear-minded. Several bold knights also tried to step forward, but they were immediately met with collective hostility from the fire dragons. Some ash dragons even opened their mouths to spit fire. "Shut up, they are your friends, you can't hurt them." Seeing this, Rohan hurriedly stopped the fire dragons that were about to attack, and then scolded the reckless knights. "Do you want to die so much? Have you forgotten what I taught you? Take out the food with your palm facing up, and then slowly stroke their heads." You all heard what the adults said, be careful with your movements. Aaron hurriedly pulled the reckless knight in front of him to his side, and then took out a glass bottle from the cloth bag beside him, and poured the grey powder at home into his hands. Long before setting off, they had already prepared a large amount of charcoal ash from fruit wood, in advance according to the eating habits of these ash dragons. Sure enough, as a faint smell of ash gradually spread, the fire dragons instantly turned their attention to the ashes in the knight's hands. Since they turned everything in the world into ashes, they haven't smelled this smell for a long time, so they all let out excited dragon roars. Aaron held the ashes and selected a red dragon about 40 meters long from the group of dragons. This was the largest female dragon in the group. Then he carefully came to the other side, holding the ashes in both hands, and tried to slowly approach the other side. A trace of greed flashed in the red dragon's eyes. She was so hungry that she just wanted to bite off the arm of the human in front of her and eat it together with the ashes. However, since Rohan had already issued an order not to harm these knights, she could only suppress her hunger and suck the ashes in Aaron's hand into her mouth first. A refreshing fruity fragrance instantly spread from her mouth, making her subconsciously squint her eyes. Aaron also took this opportunity to take more ashes out of the bag, while gently stroking the red dragon's head with trembling hands. The fine scales slowly shrank with Aaron's touch, and it seemed that there was no intention of resisting, which made Aaron's heart gradually relax its vigilance. It seems quite simple. Unexpectedly, the red dragon suddenly opened its orange-red dragon pupils, ready to forcibly resist Rohan's control and bite the hand that Aaron was stroking her. She was too hungry, and the fruitwood ashes aroused her appetite, so she was ready to disobey Rohan's orders and eat the human in front of her. Obviously, as an ash dragon, she didn't know the old saying that the first bird to stick its head out will be shot. Clang! Rohan suddenly drew the sword at his waist and chopped it at the head of the presumptuous red dragon, directly chopping her head off. The ash dragons that were originally surrounding Rohan and acting coquettishly were frightened and retreated again and again. Even the female dragons who were originally preparing to eat the ashes were scared and ran away. For a moment, they didn't know what to do. It was the first time for them to see that the once weak human could actually kill a fire dragon alone. It was really terrible. The blue light on the sword slowly dissipated. Rohan looked at the still twitching corpse of the red dragon with an expressionless face and scolded the trembling female dragons beside him. I know you are very hungry, but please don't worry. As long as you can cooperate with these humans, I guarantee that you can have a full meal. Then, Rohan came to the corpse of the red dragon, looked at the malnourished and somewhat thin female dragons around, kicked them twice and ordered, "This is a good piece of meat. You can eat it now, but this also means that you must obey the rules. Do you understand?" After possessing the dragon heart, Rohan's orders can be accurately transmitted to the hearts of these ash dragons, which made them nod repeatedly. Although their brains could not understand what Rohan's rules were, this did not affect their understanding of the first sentence. For them who were hungry, being able to have a full meal was more important than anything else. Chapter 167. Dragons Flying in Nagaroth. Time flies, and a month has passed in the blink of an eye. It also indicates that Lord Dirty King's Northern conscription order has officially come into effect. According to the regulations, all Nagaroth dreadlords who received the conscription order need to lead their troops north to resolve the war between Norsca and the Beastmen. However, since a conscription order had been issued a few years ago, even the richest lords of Nagaroth really had no surplus food. But even so, the lords still summoned a Durachi army of tens of thousands of people and drove towards the north in a mighty manner. After all, this is a battle that Lord Witch King is always paying attention to, and they all hope to take this opportunity to win the favor of Lord Witch King. Halkadora in the north of Nagaroth as the exit to the Chaos Wasteland. This fortress has always been a supply station for the Dark Elves to hunt Norscan slaves. Hundreds of slave hunting chariots driven by slave owners rushed out of the fortress like a tsunami, hunting those weak human slaves, symbolizing the glory of the city in the past. Under the towering black tower, there are long black walls nearly 100 meters high standing on the ice field, hindering the pace of chaos erosion. In the thousands of years of history, countless chaos warbands have tried to destroy this fortress and spread the will of chaos to the array of Durachi. However, even if the Chaos God Chosen personally led the invasion, this fortress always stood at the forefront of the Chaos Wasteland, becoming a thorn in the hearts of all the northern Norskins. However, at this time, this great fortress, that recorded countless glorious years of Durachi, was besieged by countless Norskins. On the towering walls, hundreds of Reaper crossbows were constantly firing cannonballs at the Norskins below, relieving the pressure on the soldiers at the city gate. The once solid black iron city gate had long been smashed open, and a chaos giant with crossbow arrows all over his body was lying outside the city, telling his identity as the culprit. Blood sacrifice to the blood god, skulls to the skull throne. Hundreds of Norscan berserkers, glowing red all over, were waving their double axes frantically, engaging in close combat with the dark swordsman blocking the door, the blood god's favorite. The ground was already full of corpses and skulls of Durachi warriors, which shocked many elven warriors who were fighting against humans for the first time. Didn't they say that humans are weak? Hold the line. Don't let these short-lived species defile my fortress. The Lord of Terror with long white hair was constantly fighting with the berserkers in front of him with a rapier and shield, while not forgetting to encourage the friendly forces around him. But it was obvious that the declining war situation could not be reversed by her delicate voice. In the sky far away from the ground, a small black dragon was wailing in pain under the siege of dozens of manticores, and the harpies became their food. On the plains, the Dark Riders who were originally preparing to launch a sneak attack were also chased by the Ice War wolves, and could only flee helplessly. Fuck. Why haven't the reinforcement come yet? Are you all waiting for me to die? The female lord looked at all this in despair, but the battle continued. She could only curse the fear lords who were righteous in the letter. A few days ago, the scouts had reported to her that the fear lord's army was about to arrive, but the reinforcement had not arrived yet. Obviously, the fear lords from Nagaland wanted to see her die on the battlefield, so that they could take over Halkadora with a clear conscience. Most importantly, the 4,000 defenders in the city had already been exhausted in the war over the past few days. Even if she wanted to resist, she couldn't. While she was distracted, the Norse berserkers had already killed all the dark swordsmen at the city gate, leaving only the female lord and a few warriors behind her. Looking at the beautiful female elf in front of them, who was pale under the protection of the warriors, these Khorne berserkers showed a strange smile at the corners of their mouths. Obviously, they were all looking forward to what would happen next. Boom, boom, boom. With the sound of heavy footsteps, a huge blue voice slowly walked into the city gate, and under the cheers of the berserkers and the delights of the female lord, it roared to the sky. Ayo ayo woo, it's old Dick. Ha ha ha, I knew that the ice trolls would not die so easily. Go on, Dick, use your big dick to knock down this female elf. It's a pity that such a beautiful female elf will be smashed into a meat paste by the trolls before she has even played with it. But it doesn't matter, we will definitely meet more next time. The surrounding berserkers laughed loudly, not hiding the filthy words in their mouths, expecting the troll to smash the female elf with his sledgehammer. Since believing in Khorne, although they still retain the most basic desires, compared to the sissy Slanesh, they prefer to watch the performance of blood and flesh flying. Seeing this, several Durachi warriors gritted their teeth and decisively abandoned the female lord and planned to escape, but the berserkers chopped off their feet with flying axes. The ice trolls were not ambiguous either. They directly hit the wailing elf deserters with a stick, smashing their bodies into pulp accurately, leaving their round heads. Good. Dick's skills are still so good. He can successfully keep the heads every time. As expected of the most intelligent troll in the Chaos Wasteland, it's amazing. Hearing the Norsemen around him praising his intelligence, the ice troll showed a silly smile on his ferocious face, and then picked up the blood-stained stick, and came to the female lord. Damn, I didn't expect that I would die in the hands of an ugly troll. Looking at the clumps of minced meat on the ground, the female lord thought that she could not escape, so she simply closed her eyes and gave up resistance. Roar. At this moment, the manticore in the sky suddenly roared, and then a huge black shadow suddenly fell and instantly caught the ice troll. Then, a scorching pillar of fire suddenly fell from the sky, burning these bare-chested berserkers wearing only leather armor into ashes. feeling the heat wave coming from the front, the female lord hurriedly opened her eyes, and then she noticed that a group of two-legged dragons that could breathe fire appeared in the sky at some point. Each of these dragons was dozens of meters long, and their huge bodies were covered with silver dragon armor, which looked like it was made of rare Isolama silver. The female lord's eyes were full of fear. She didn't know whether this newly appeared army was an enemy or a friend, and she was even more shocked by the terrifying number of dragons. On the backs of nearly 100 dragons sat silver-armored warriors holding dragon lances, just as dazzling as the dragon princes who fought against demons in the legend. They controlled the dragons to charge at the fleeing manticores, and at the same time, they kept stabbing out their lances, leaving blood holes on the manticores. And more dragons spewed flames at the fleeing Norskins, turning the entire chaotic wasteland into a sea of fire. Boom. Just as the female lord was in a daze, the body of the ice troll suddenly fell from the sky and hit her in front of her. Then, a silver dragon with a body length of more than 100 meters suddenly landed in front of her, with a pair of dragon eyes flashing blue light staring at her. Just as she swallowed her saliva and hesitated whether to go forward to greet it, the dragon suddenly lowered its head, revealing a handsome elf on its back. Unlike any Darachi elf she knew, this elf in silver armor was like a real prince of Ossen. He smiled and greeted her. "The banquet seems to have not started yet. I should not be late." The visitors were Rohan and the Blessed Carrot. Chapter 168 Silver Dragon Knight. "No. Of course not. Thank you for saving my life." Looking at Rohan, who landed in front of her like a white dragon prince, the female lord couldn't help blushing, and then pretended to be weak, covering her shoulder and whispering to Rohan. Although she didn't know Rohan's identity, nor did she know why he saved her. But to be able to cultivate so many flying dragon troops, he must be a powerful fear lord, right? With her troops almost completely destroyed, she couldn't resist those fear lords who had long coveted Halkadora. Rather than letting those lords who didn't help her die, it's better to hand herself and this fortress to Rohan and hold on to this thigh. "Are you okay?" Rohan didn't know what the female lord in front of him was thinking. Looking at the other party who suddenly became weak, he thought she was here to make trouble. If he knew what the female lord was thinking, he would definitely laugh out loud, because he didn't have any improper thoughts about this fortress. If it were any other dreadlord of Nagaroth, they would have embraced this delicate white-haired female lord and sent troops to take over this prosperous fortress. After all, the busy slave trade and the tariffs of the slave owners in the past, plus a female lord who was powerless to resist, were enough to arouse the desire of any dreadlord. But for Rohan, Grand Town, which can be used as a high-quality seaport, and the Black Ark across the ocean, are his base camp. In terms of wealth alone, Rohan may not be able to compare with those major families with a history of nearly 10,000 years, but he is definitely the richest among all the new lords. The colonies in other worlds are his basic base, and a fortress that may be invaded by chaos at any time is not worth his energy and time to pay attention to. The female lord obviously didn't know all this, but she was still keenly aware that Rohan didn't care about the survival of this fortress, which made her a little unhappy. "What a joke. The elves who pursued me can line up all the way from here to Nagarand, and you are not willing to come down and hug me!" Exclamation mark. But when she thought of those hateful lords of fear who were about to arrive at Alcadora, she could only put aside her pride and asked reluctantly, "Unknown lord, in order to prevent those hateful chaos humans from attacking again, can you please take your dragon knights to stay here temporarily?" "Of course, I came here following the call of the Lord Witch King. I will not leave here easily before further arrangements are made." Rohan didn't care about this proposal. After all, the reason why he appeared here was simply to obey the orders of the Lord Witch King. Unless the Lord Witch King personally ordered him to march to the Chaos Wasteland, he would stay in this city and fish. This time he not only brought the flying dragons blessed by the Lady of the Mist, but even the Teutonic Knights on their backs received a weak blessing. Such a youth version of the Holy Grail Knight. If any of them were lost on this meaningless battlefield, Rohan would feel distressed. Therefore, unless he had to, he would not participate in any battles and political struggles. Upon hearing that Rohan was willing to lead the team to stay, the female lord immediately took off her disguise and shouted to the deserters who had regrouped with full spirit, "Hurry up and make enough space near the Black Tower. You idiots. Don't let our guests feel that we are not treating them well. Yes, sir. Hearing this, the defenders hurriedly ran towards the Black Tower. They didn't want to offend the newly appeared flying dragon lord. Seeing that the other party had already cleared a landing position for him, Rohan nodded to the female lord, patted the white dragon's back and said, "Ro, we can't let our dragon cavalry fight alone. Let's go and help them." Roar. The snow white radish let out a dragon roar, then flapped its wings, and jumped up from the ground, chasing after the Norscan deserters in the distance. The whistling wind blew the female lord's long white hair with blood on it. Looking at the hundreds of silver flying dragons flying in the air, she couldn't help but be a little stunned. Handsome. This male silver is so handsome. It was not until Rohan's figure gradually faded away that the female lord came back to her senses. She couldn't help but slap herself and cursed. Fuck. I actually forgot to introduce myself and forgot to ask the other person's name. I'm such a fool. A few hours later, under Rohan's command, the fleeing Norscan warbands were almost all reduced to ashes under the pursuit of the dragon cavalry. Even if there were some who escaped by chance, it would be difficult to make a difference. However, Rohan knew that these troops were at most the vanguard, and more Norscan troops would surely come to attack the city in a few days. In the distant future, these Chaos War states will continuously attack the northern defense line of Druzy and weaken the power of the elves. Especially a woman called Corn Bride, Demon Prince, or a half-demon woman, even broke through all the fortresses on the border and headed straight for Nagaland. Although every attack was thwarted by the Witch King, they still fought again and again, and Corn's resurrection without martial ethics was like a dogskin plaster sticking to the blood bar of the elves. The Bride of Corn. It is said that her appearance was molded by Corn according to his own preferences, just like his favorite figurines. Looking at the Norscans fleeing below, Rohan, riding on the dragon's back, couldn't help but fall into deep thought. How should he deal with that guy? If nothing unexpected happens, the strength of this bride should be much stronger than that of an ordinary chaos champion. Coupled with Khorne's unethical resurrection, the best way to fight against such a woman is not to kill her, but to imprison her. Looking at the silver dragon knights flying around him, Rohan did not feel any complacency, but was depressed. Chaos is really too against the sky. Even if his plan to create a god is really successful, it can only barely create a place for survival in the current mortal world. If he wants to save the world, it is obviously not enough to rely on the existing power. He needs more helpers and development time. Damn, the more I think about it, the angrier I get. Khorne's bride had better not fall into my hands. Otherwise I will definitely give her to the cult of joy, to be made into a shrine, tied to a cross, and let Khorne watch his bride being humiliated. Picking up an ebony javelin and throwing it at the fleeing manticore in the distance, Rohan didn't even look to see if he hit it, and shouted to the surrounding silver dragon knights, "Prepare to return. Remember what I have said. You are my soldiers of Rohan. Don't show any cowardice in front of my people. Understand? As you command." The silver dragon knight's eyes flashed with a faint blue light. They had already learned from Rohan about Turach's bloodthirstiness and meanness, so they naturally did not dare to let down their guard. What's more, they are now considered half-living saints. Even if they are actively looking for trouble, they are not afraid of it at all. Chapter 169. Unkind Visitors. What is a dreadlord? To seize power with powerful force and to instill loyalty with absolute fear, this is the dreadlord. They claim to be the local noble families. Some of them are flatterers and arrogant strategists, while others are overbearing and tyrannical strategists. But there is no doubt that they are all excellent warriors who have experienced hundreds of battles. Compared with Princess Sir, who loves court battles, the dreadlords of Durachi are more keen to use duels to solve their political enemies. The blood of political enemies can wash away their defeat in political battles. After all, if they are gone, what can they fight with? If Malekith had not forcibly promoted several laws strictly prohibiting internal fighting, I'm afraid that the number of dreadlords who died in duels alone would exceed 100 every year. For these cruel colleagues of his, Rohan has always dealt with them in a way that they do not interfere with each other. As long as there is no actual dispute over interests between the two sides, then everyone will be good to each other. The dreadlords of Karand Care are also very sensible and have no intention of provoking Rohan. No major conflicts have occurred in the past few years, After all, let's not mention Rohan's identity as a bastard that has always been misunderstood by the outside world. The reputation that Rohan has made in the underground duel arena in the past 100 years is enough to deter some villains. What's more, Rohan can always bring back a sufficient number of slaves from the other world, so no one will take the initiative to cause trouble for the sake of money. But it is obvious that, although the Lord of Karandkar will not take the initiative to provoke him due to conflicts of interest, the Lord of Fear from Nagaroth may not be. The one who comes is not kind. On the black tower of the fortress, Rohan kept using a telescope to observe the Durachi army in the distance. Looking at the opponent's various offensive formations, he couldn't help but sigh. Because he was eager to save people at that time, Rohan really didn't know how he provoked these fear lords, so he asked the female lord next to him, Lady Marina, are you sure they really did not save him on purpose? Of course I'm sure. Have you ever seen a fool who would spend 3 days walking 10 kilometers? The white-haired female lord named Marina showed a sneer at the corner of her mouth. Obviously she didn't have much good feelings for these fear lords who came late after the battle. There are also differences between the fear lords. Her family is also a big family in Halkadora, otherwise she would not be able to help her to the position of fear lord. In Halkadora, no family dares to look down on them. But in the battle with the Norskans, most of the private soldiers who were originally loyal to her family had died in the battle, and most of the elders were seriously injured, and they were simply unable to fight against these outsiders. Thinking of this, Marina couldn't help but look at Rohan. After thinking for a while, she put forward the conditions in a somewhat helpless tone. I hope to cooperate with you. My family is willing to pay a high price to hire your dragon riders. I only ask you to stand with us in the next political struggle. Can I refuse? I always hate this kind of messy political struggle. Do you think you have any reason not to cooperate with me? You saved me, which has disrupted all their plans. When they enter the city, they will definitely shoot arrows at you. Marina was still very confident about the conditions she put forward. After all, the relationship between the two camps is now the same, and this deal is not a loss. Looking at Marina's slightly narrowed crescent eyes, Rohan could even guess the smile under the other party's mask, and couldn't help but have a headache. Because he was riding a flying dragon the whole time, he did not get in touch with the Dreadlord on the ground, and he didn't know that he had accidentally disrupted the other party's plan. And the reason why he saved Emery was just because the Dreadlord armor on the other party was too conspicuous, and he didn't expect to be involved in such a thing. Seeing the reluctance on Rohan's face, Marina's mouth curled up a smile, and she raised the price directly to the highest. I will pay a monthly salary of 1,000 gold for each dragon knight. I will pay as much as you offer, and it will continue until these fear lords withdraw. Hearing such a generous commission, Rohan's eyes flashed with a gleam of light, and the look he gave Marina was different. Sister, you are really good at judging people. But out of courtesy, he was still like a junior who was given New Year's money by his elders. On the surface, he seemed to be shirking, but he had already opened his pockets and waited for the money to go in. What did I do wrong? Okay, I allow you to hire 20 silver dragon knights, but you must report to me every time you go out. No problem, I won't mess around. Seeing that she finally won over a short-term ally, Marina finally breathed a sigh of relief, and her eyes looking at the Durachi army outside the city were no longer nervous. Although the commission of 20,000 gold coins a month is a little expensive, it is like a life-saving straw for the Marina family whose strength has been frustrated. If Rohan cannot be pulled onto the chariot, I'm afraid that when those greedy lords of fear enter the city, they will have to pay more than just 20,000. Woo woo woo. Suddenly, a series of military trumpets came from the Durachi army outside the fortress, and even the soldiers shouted various slogans, as if they were about to launch an attack. Obviously, they were preparing to give the survivors in the city a blow. Through the telescope, Rohan could even see that several Durachi wearing the armor of the Lord of Fear were drinking recklessly, obviously not taking them seriously. You are so arrogant, you are looking for death. Rohan put away the telescope. It was the first time he saw someone so arrogant as to blow the military trumpet to launch an attack on someone else's territory. You know, even the private wars between the Lords of Fear will leave some mercy in order to prevent the occurrence of irreconcilable conflicts between the families. The act of blowing the bugle undoubtedly showed that they did not take the severely damaged Marina family seriously. Such a scene made Marina, who was already hot-tempered, pale. I don't know whether it was because of anger or regret. After all, the total number of troops under her command would not exceed 1,000. Facing the Lord of Nagaroth with nearly 20,000 troops, there was really no way to resist. If she failed to hold on to Rohan's thigh, I'm afraid that the entire Halkadora would be forcibly occupied, and the family's 1,000-year foundation would be destroyed. Looking at the Nagaran army outside that was a little too bullying. Rohan looked at the ally next to him who had just formed an alliance, and decided to help. Dare to blow the bugle before entering the city. This doesn't look like reinforcement. Do you want to take the initiative? No hurry, I want to play with them. Marina declined Rohan's kindness, and a grim smile gradually appeared under her mask. It was time for her to prove her value as an ally. After all, her family has thousands of years of heritage, and there are more than tens of millions of loyal warriors scattered among the people. How could she really let others manipulate her? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 170 Contradiction. Compared to Rohan and Marina who were discussing countermeasures on the city wall, the Fear Lords outside the city did not have many concerns. Because they failed to arrive at the battlefield in advance, they did not know that Rohan and his Silver Dragon Knights had arrived at Alcadora. A young Darachi riding an armored cold lizard was constantly looking at the fortress with billowing black smoke in the distance, and could not help but taunt his companions beside him. It's really tragic. I didn't expect that even the city gate has been destroyed. It seems that Marina should have died in the battle. Who knows, but even if she didn't die, what can we do? We brought tens of thousands of Darachi warriors this time, enough to crush her family into dust. You can't say that. Our goal is to take this fortress by peaceful means. There is no need to use force, unless it is absolutely necessary. Several young Darachi, who were also dressed gorgeously, laughed at each other. Obviously, they were all from the Noble Alliance in the Nagarand area. As early as when the Witch King issued the conscription order, their family had already prepared to take over the city, and even the future tariffs and trade income had been divided. As for the Marina family, although Marina was once a powerful lord with nearly 10,000 soldiers, after such a tragic battle, how much strength can she have left to fight against the Noble Alliance? No matter how to say it, the current strength comparison is 2.4W to 800, and the advantage is mine. Let's go into the city. I can't wait to tear off Marina's mask and let this little Ang. Before the voice fell, a dragon roar came from the city of Alcadora, and the lords who were originally relaxed instantly became solemn. Then, they saw a 100-meter long silver dragon flying out of the city, and flying straight towards them. The leading dreadlord hurriedly grabbed the reins of the cold lizard under his crotch, looked at the bipedal silver dragon in the air with some surprise, and couldn't help asking, impossible, isn't it said that Halkadora only has a weak black dragon that was seriously injured? Where did this silver dragon come from? Don't be nervous, it's just a silver bipedal dragon. This time we brought 2 adult war hydras, which definitely have the upper hand in terms of numbers. The other nobles were also very surprised by the sudden appearance of the silver dragon, but they didn't take it to heart. Although most of the giant beasts have been taken to the front line in the south by the Lord Witch King, they can still get 2 war hydras. Roar, however, as more and more silver dragons flew out of the city and began to hover over Halkadora, the calmness on the faces of the dreadlords finally disappeared, replaced by panic. Even if it is a beast without wisdom like a bipedal dragon, this number is really too much, right? Exclamation mark. Prepare for battle. Drachi. Most of the local soldiers from Nagarand were veterans who had served for hundreds of years. Although they were frightened by the silver dragons in the sky, they still stayed at their respective posts. The young Lord of Fear stared at the silver dragons in the sky nervously. This flying dragon unit obviously did not belong to Marina. It seemed that someone had arrived before them. More's peace. Several female sorcerers of death spells were constantly using magic to soothe the tense nerves of the soldiers. After all, it was unclear whether the other party was an enemy or a friend. If they accidentally fired, it would cause a disaster. Since it was early in the morning, the nobles could vaguely see the black dragon flags in the hands of the silver dragon knights on the dragon's back through the thin morning mist, so they couldn't help but ask in confusion, "It's the black dragon flag that I haven't seen before. Could it be from the dreadlords of Krakeland or Kalandkar? I have never heard of flying dragon lords from other places. Could it be the reinforcement from Lacus? Impossible. Lacus is busy looting the old world now. How could he have the leisure to send reinforcement to the inland?" Rohan held the Ashes battle flag in his hand, looking at the densely packed Tirachi warriors below, as well as the large number of cold lizard riders and dread knights, and couldn't help but sigh. It should be said that these capital nobles with the 3 black flags are rich. The cost of these hundreds of cold lizard riders alone is already equivalent to all of Rohan's current military expenses, right? What's more, this is even when all the large troops have been sent to the southern battlefield, and they can still form such a large army. The family's foundation can be seen, as expected of the nobles who have followed the Witch King since Nagarath. In the short term, it is really impossible for an upstart like me to surpass them. Just as Rohan was sighing, the nobles below also noticed Rohan riding on the back of the dragon, and cast their scrutinizing eyes on him. Rohan, sitting on the back of Luobo, was wearing silver armor, and holding a burning black dragon flag. He looked like the Star Dragon Prince from the Kingdom of Kalada. However, such an elf who was dressed very undark elf actually wore a pure black skull on his chest, which symbolized the Lord of Fear. This inevitably made them wonder, "Who are you? Which side are you on?" Luobo slowly landed on the ground. The oppressive feeling brought by his huge body made the surrounding Tirachi soldiers swallow their saliva, and then pointed their spears at Rohan. As low-level soldiers, they could not understand the noble flag, but the armor on Rohan was too much like that of a high elf. In addition, they had never seen a silver flying dragon, so they subconsciously regarded Rohan as a sneak attack force of the Asur Expeditionary Force. Seeing this, the leading young lord hurried forward to stop the crossbowman who was about to pull the trigger, and then shouted at the fierce spearmen who had not yet reacted, "Stop, you cheap fools, look carefully, that's one of ours." Then, he turned his eyes to Rohan on the dragon's back, and introduced himself with some pride. "I'm Higgs, the Fear Lord of Nagarand. May I ask who you are?" "Higgs. This is a name that makes people miss. I didn't expect you to live until now." Hearing the name of an old acquaintance, Rohan couldn't help but raise his eyebrows, then took off his helmet, looked at Higgs with some indifference and greeted, "I'm Rohan, salute you, may your blood bring me glory." What a courage. As soon as the voice fell, several nobles following Higgs drew their warhammers and pointed them at Rohan, but were frightened away by the faint light of fire in the carrot's mouth. "Kane, why is this two-legged dragon breathing fire?" Exclamation mark. Looking at the giant dragon under Rohan's crotch, Higgs couldn't help but touch his chin and fell into thought. He really couldn't remember when he had provoked the other party. Chapter 171 Commander. Looking at Higgs's thoughtful face, Rohan's eyes slowly revealed a faint blue light, and he obviously couldn't hold back his murderous intent. His grievances with Higgs can be said to be long-standing, and can even be traced back to the days when he was first sent to the Black Guard training camp by the Witch King. When Rohan was first sent to the training camp, he was ignorant of everything. Compared with the elites selected from various noble families, he was not a concept at all. As for this young elf who was personally sent to the training camp by the Witch King, the nobles were respectful at first, thinking that Rohan had some extraordinary abilities. However, after a few days of getting along, these dandy boys discovered that Rohan knew nothing about anything, so they started a program that everyone loved, school bullying. Poor Rohan, he was bullied by those dandy boys during the day, and teased by the female apprentices at night. His life was miserable. If it weren't for his persistence and hard work, and the motivation of seeing himself getting stronger little by little from the system panel, he would have fallen into the sect of joy long ago. After 2 years, Rohan finally improved his attack and defense to 30, becoming a fairly good warrior. However, just when Rohan thought his training career was finally coming to an end, he found that the Witch King had sent people to kill all the mothers of these noble children. This was certainly not because the Witch King was bored enough to avenge Rohan, but because this was also part of the training. The noble children who lost their mothers fell into silence, and then became perverted in silence, and began to fight each other in the selection of the Black Tower mentors. It was a cruel time, and only the strongest, most sensitive, and most ruthless elf warriors could survive the fight that lasted for 10 years. All the students had the blood of their former classmates on their hands, which also led to countless teams that huddled together for warmth, and also dealt with those students who were not good at talking. It was also at that time that Rohan met Iril and Kaku, as well as some noble children who were relatively normal and could communicate normally. However, it was this relatively mild-tempered small group that was ridiculed and hostile by other military camps. The Blackguard Barracks is divided into a total of 20 Black Towers, which fight each other through an annual tournament. The winner will have dominance over the remaining towers in the following year. Although Rohan's own strength has become stronger and stronger, his team members are not so lucky. Every year, there are team members who die at the hands of students from other Black Towers, which also made the small group that Rohan worked hard to form on the verge of collapse. And the culprit is Higgs. Rohan will never forget that this local youth from Nagaland used almost cruel means to cut the skin of his team members and torture them to death. And when Rohan challenged him with murderous intent, he dared to refuse. This kind of cheating behavior directly made Rohan lose his mind at that time. He even rushed to the arena in front of the Witch King, ready to challenge the 8 reserve blackguards on the field. If it weren't for the assassin Master Kull who suddenly appeared and knocked him out, I'm afraid he would have died with the opponent in the arena. Since then, Higgs disappeared in the Blackguard's barracks, as if he had evaporated from the earth. It is said that he went home to inherit the position of leader. I didn't expect to meet him here this time. The end of the memory. Seeing that Higgs didn't seem to remember himself, Rohan couldn't help but curl up a cruel smile at the corner of his mouth. Forgot? Then help you remember it. Although Rohan can only kill Higgs in a duel, this is the frontline battlefield facing chaos. It's not impossible that Higgs suddenly got uterine cancer or breast cancer and died. Thinking of this, Rohan pretended to be more arrogant than Higgs, just like those ordinary fear lords, looking down on the other army and said, if you are here to grab the position of Luobai commander, then I can tell you that this honor has been contracted by me. You'd better not make such a calculation. Oh, so that's the case. Then please rest assured, our Nagaland Legion has no intention of getting involved in the position of commander. Higgs suddenly realized that it was a fear lord who had set his eyes on the position of commander. No wonder he had such great hostility towards him. But this is just right. Anyway, their target is only Halkadora, and they have no intention of this short-term northern commander. Since returning home to inherit the throne of the Fear Lord, he has brutally killed more than tens of millions of compatriots with his own hands. He has long forgotten the few weaklings he killed casually in the arena. As for Rohan's handsome appearance, because Rohan's face was covered with blood at the time, he had no idea that the Silver Dragon Lord in front of him was the madman who wanted to kill him. He would not waste time paying attention to the name of madman. Seeing that Rohan seemed to still be hostile to him, Higgs' eyes flashed with a trace of tyranny. If it were normal, he would have dueled with the other party in the morning. If it were not for the upcoming confrontation with Marina, and the opponent's dragon was close at hand, he would not waste his breath to continue explaining. Wait, there will be a chance to deal with you in the future. Rohan put on a high-handed look and seemed very satisfied with Higgs' humble attitude and continued to be aggressive. In this case, then the Legion you lead must also obey my orders and prepare for the next battle with the Norscan monkeys. This is impossible. You are not the commander of the North, and you are not qualified to command my people. Higgs really didn't expect Rohan to make such an excessive request. This time, in order to smoothly take over Halkadora, he brought almost all his and his family's private soldiers this time. If the family's private soldiers are included in the commander's organization, wouldn't it become a regular army and legally become the army of the Witch King Malekith? Exclamation mark. Humph, I knew you wouldn't agree. Rohan naturally knew this, and his purpose was to weaken Higgs's power before entering the city. Seeing Higgs's face full of anger, Rohan slowly took out an envelope from his arms, raised it above his head, and said to him contemptuously, "Lord Marina of Alcadora has elected me as the commander of the North. This conscription order is for her. I believe that the appointment letter should be sent soon." Looking at the envelope with Alcadora's seal in Rohan's hand, Higgs's face immediately became gloomy, and even the nobles behind him looked at Rohan unkindly. He wanted to seize the military power as soon as he met. This is not like a 3-7-point city that can be sent away. Chapter 172 Beast Man. In the end, Higgs chose to hand over 2,000 infantrymen and 30 cold lizard riders as the price for Rohan to let him into the city. Although he could also choose to forcefully break through Rohan's blockade, considering that he would have to have a conflict with Marina in the city, he could only choose to give in. Moreover, if Rohan really didn't let him enter the city, if the Norskins launched an attack, his troops would definitely suffer the most. Seeing Rohan proudly leading his private soldiers away, Higgs suppressed his inner resentment and turned to shout to the nobles around him, "Enter the city." Inside the city, looking at the 2,000 soldiers that Rohan had deceived from Higgs, Marina's eyes flashed with a strange color. She really didn't expect that Rohan could actually ask for troops. After the previous communication, she already knew that Rohan had no reserve troops, which meant that Rohan had no troops to support him except for the 100 Silver Dragon Knights. In this case, if you dare to take the initiative to provoke the noble alliance with tens of thousands of soldiers, you are either an absolute fool or an absolute strong man. Seeing Rohan jumping off the dragon saddle and coming in front of her, Marina immediately greeted him and celebrated. "Congratulations, with the assistance of this army, you will definitely be able to gain more advantages in the next battle, right?" Facing Marina's blessing, Rohan nodded slightly to express his gratitude, and then smiled and asked, "It's a pity that this army is their family's private army. Although it is not trustworthy, it can be used to defend the city. How about I sell them to you? Are you serious?" Upon hearing this, Marina instantly became alert and began to look at the 2,000 Durachi warriors who were slowly entering the city behind Rohan with a scrutinizing eye. It was indeed as Rohan said, this army was completely untrustworthy in the next internal struggle, and was not even as reliable as the local civilians in Halkadora. But now she couldn't even get 1,000 infantrymen, and the new recruits in training couldn't fight against those fierce Norscan berserkers, and she was in an embarrassing situation with no soldiers available. It was indeed a good choice to have such a foreign army as cannon fodder to temporarily defend the city. Thinking of this, Marina walked in front of Rohan with a cat-like step, put her face on Rohan's shoulder, and said in a charming voice, "Everything has a price. Name a price." 50,000 gold. "Please, you got this army for free, and I have already hired your dragon knights. It is impossible to raise so much money in a short period of time." 50,000 gold. Facing Marina's temptation, Rohan was unmoved like a steel straight man with a righteous spirit. Rohan has no intention of annexing the 2,000 Durachi troops who are prone to accidents. He just wants to sell them for a good price. After all, he can summon tens of thousands of vassal troops who have been tempered by actual combat from the world of Pendor at any time with a portal. With his own Silver Dragon Knights, his family background is not weaker than Higgs. Looking at Rohan's handsome face who only recognizes money and not people, Marina gritted her teeth angrily and prepared to go back to raise money and look in the mirror. She was considered a flower in Halkadora. How could she become so unattractive in front of Rohan? Looking at Marina's receding back, Rohan turned his gaze to the Nagarand army heading to the Black Tower military camp in the distance, obviously intending to forcibly station there. The military camp next to the Black Tower usually belongs to the Lord's direct troops, and Higgs directly occupied the empty military camp for himself, obviously not taking Marina seriously. Looking at the Marina family guards who were injured in the battle being expelled from the military camp, Rohan's mouth curled up a sneer. "Go ahead, the more rampant you are, the tighter our chariots will be tight." Although Higgs could not be killed openly, this was Halkadora. As long as he could get Marina's support, it would be easy to make a foreign lord disappear. He hoped to see the situation as chaotic as possible, so that Marina would have to ally with Rohan, who was also in a weak position. If Higgs really wanted to fight to the death, Rohan could still save the beauty and establish friendly cooperation with the wealthy Marina family. Even if he was held accountable by the Witch King, he could easily put the blame on Marina. After all, what power could an outsider like him have here? Rohan then took Carrot back to his military camp on the outskirts of the city, ready to wait patiently for the development of the situation. A few days later, Chaos Wasteland Moo roar. On the forest trails in the dense black forest, thousands of humanoid-horned creatures with simple equipment were skillfully crossing the dense jungle. The extremely sharp branches and rugged mountain roads caused by chaos corrosion were like flat ground under their sheep-like feet, and they seemed to be very familiar with this dark forest. They were the evil creatures twisted by chaos, beastmen. Tens of thousands of years ago, due to the sudden collapse of the space-time portals at the two poles, the abundant wind of magic swept the entire world, twisting some shepherds and animals at that time together, which was the prototype of beastmen. From then on, these children of chaos who were loved by the four chaos gods began to multiply at an alarming rate all over the world, and became a scourge to the world. What's more terrifying is that they have no reproductive isolation at all. GW's early setting later changed to only reproduce with humans. Boom boom boom. Several minotaurs holding huge axes also mixed in the ranks of these beastmen. Their huge bodies several meters high and scarlet beast eyes all revealed their thirst for blood. They were eager to drink the blood of humans and elves, chew their bones, and offer their skulls to the blood god. I don't know if the blood god responded to their prayers. Suddenly, a roar resounding through the sky came from the distant horizon, which immediately made these minotaurs restless. They were originally guards guarding the remains of the Chaos Champion, and they were usually busy fighting with the Norskins. The reason why they followed the guidance of the screaming shaman this time was because they felt that the endless war and flesh and blood from the south were calling them. Moo. With an angry roar, several minotaurs raised their giant axes and rushed forward, not caring about the inferior horned beasts that were trampled to death by them. Great. Is the bloody fight finally coming? Exclamation mark. The charge of the minotaurs instantly made the entire beastmen warp and agitated, and they also noticed the fire in the distance. Whether it was the inferior horned beasts with simple equipment or the big horned beasts with battle axes and shields, they all started running, hoping to be able to participate in the battle. However, they didn't know that the world outside the chaos forest would be a purgatory for them who were hairy and weak to fire. Looking at the flames rising outside the woods. Chapter 173 Fight. When these minotaurs roared out of the forest, they found that there was no battlefield with blood and flesh flying around as they had imagined, but only a pile of ashes emitting heat. Looking at all this in front of them, the scarlet in the minotaur's eyes gradually faded, replaced by a trace of doubt. Strange, where did the atmosphere group that usually hid behind to cheer and act as a footstool go? They did not notice that dozens of silver flying dragons were constantly hovering in the air, looking at them with the cover of moonlight. Seeing more and more beastmen rushing out of the forest, Rohan couldn't help but frowned, patted the dragon's back and complained, I thought I just encountered a little thief crossing the forest, but I didn't expect to poke the old nest. This number is too much, right? Eluobo under the seat also growled with some dissatisfaction. In the past few days, there were at least thousands of beastmen who died under her dragon flame, which made her feel annoyed. Looking at the dissatisfied Carrot, Rohan could only stroke the dragon's back and soothe it with a gentle voice. Little girl, don't be too impatient. I'm as impatient as you, but if we don't burn these dirty bugs, there will only be more and more in the future. In order to intensify the conflict between the two fear lords in the city, Rohan deliberately found a reason to take a large army out for patrol. As a result, thanks to his early patrol, I really didn't expect that there would be so many beastmen in the forest. In just 1 week, hundreds of chaos warbands with thousands or tens of thousands of beastmen began to gather in the woods and were about to form a terrible beastman army. Even if Rohan continued to lead the Silver Dragon Knights to kill these beastmen who lacked long range, it was useless for the nearly 1 million beastmen. Prepare to retreat. The next thing is not our responsibility. Looking at these beastmen who were gathering more and more, and the Silver Dragon Knights who had exhausted their dragon breath around him, Rohan could only helplessly raise his staff and prepare to release a 10,000 flames. Clang, the abundant fire element quickly condensed into a huge flaming phoenix, which uttered a loud phoenix cry and flew towards the beastmen. Rohan did not control the phoenix, but let it explode a mushroom cloud among the beastmen, and then returned to Halkadora with the Silver Dragon Knights. The war was approaching, and he had to go back to inform Marina of the upcoming attack by the beastmen, and then find a way to kill Higgs. Halkadora under the complicated gaze of the Black Tower guards, the Silver Dragon Knights landed in the barracks, removed their helmets, and revealed their simple human faces. Even after a few days of getting along, as Tarachi, they still found it difficult to accept that these Dragon Knights were actually human. In their subconscious, such noble knights wearing noble silver armor, and being able to control giant dragons, to soar in the sky should have pointed ears, not the humans they looked down on in the past. But after all, they were brought by Rohan to defend their homeland, so even the locals who looked down on humans could only choose to be arrogant and not talk to humans. As for the Silver Dragon Knights, they did not have so many concerns. Since Rohan had already greeted them in advance, they were even surprised that they were not treated badly. After all, according to Rohan, his male compatriots were cruel and cunning, and his female compatriots were cunning and cruel, which could not be understood by common sense. Now they were just treated coldly at most, and there was no bloody conflict as they expected. Rohan had naturally heard about the experience of his subordinates, and could only pray for his compatriots secretly, hoping that they could have some foresight, and not make trouble. Even if they discriminated against humans at ordinary times, when 100 living saints, with blue lightning in their eyes stood in front of them, they hoped that they could keep a little reason. If something really happened, I'm afraid that even Rohan himself could not stop it. You wait here, remember not to have disputes with others, and come out directly back to the camp after I finish the meeting. Yes. Since Dario was leading Aang and others to plunder the remaining human technology in Fire Dragon World, the task of guarding Rohan's safety now fell on the Silver Dragon Knights. Compared to the Holy Grail Knights who drank the blood of Lilith, the process of the Teutonic Knights receiving the blessing was much simpler. They just received the baptism of the Holy Light like Rohan. The Holy Light with the power of Rajlia would make their bodies immortal. Although the strength of their souls was a little different from that of the Holy Grail Knights, they could also use magic attacks. Because of this, the Silver Dragon Knights, who were better at taking damage and fighting melee, were naturally more suitable as guards than the Silver Mist Hunters who wasted the stealth feature. Looking at these well-behaved knights, Rohan nodded with satisfaction, and then entered the Black Tower alone, and walked towards Marina's lord's room. I haven't seen them for a few days, and I don't know how they get along. Pingling Polar. Before entering the hall, Rohan could already hear the quarrels and the sounds of smashing things inside through the door, as well as the helpless expressions of the guards outside the door. It seems that they don't get along very well. Rohan's mouth showed a faint smile. It's good to quarrel, so that he will have more opportunities to fish in troubled waters. After pushing open the door, Marina was looking at Higgs in front of her with resentment, and said in an almost hostile tone, "You bitch from Nagaland, if you dare to mention any shitty marriage in front of me again, I will chop off your dick and feed it to the dog." Of course you can choose to refuse, but if you stick to your own opinion, I can't guarantee that the army of Nagaland can stand on the front line when necessary. Higgs' face was full of a confident smile. He liked to see Marina's frustrated and helpless expression. Relying on this trick of coercion and inducement like taking advantage of others' misfortune, he has already expanded the territory of several towns for his family and become a veritable big family. And now, he only needs to take down Halkadora, the fortress connected to the Chaos Wasteland, and he can directly become the most powerful Dreadlord in the Nagaland area. Looking at the wanton smile on Higgs' face, Marina felt that she was about to explode, and she wanted to challenge him immediately. Suddenly, her eyes caught sight of Rohan who was watching the show at the door. A hint of surprise flashed in her eyes for a moment. Then she walked past Higgs and came to Rohan and said, "You are finally back. You must be exhausted after patrolling for a few days. Do you need me to pour you a cup of tea?" "I'm sorry, I didn't come back to participate in your boring political struggle." Rohan saw at a glance that Marina was intentionally trying to divert Higgs' attention to him, so he cursed angrily. "Those damn beastmen are gathering again. It won't be long before hundreds of thousands of beastmen will attack our fortress. We should strengthen the city defense immediately." Chapter 174. Of course, the so-called anger was all fake. After all, even if Halkadora was really occupied by the Norskins, it would not affect him at all. Although he had previously used his status as the Northern Commander to force Higgs to bring 2,000 soldiers and some cold lizard riders. But his title of commander was not recognized by the Witch King. Although Marina, as an ally, had agreed to nominate Rohan as the commander, anything could change before the Witch King's order was officially issued. Therefore, in this case, he naturally hoped to let Higgs' troops serve as cannon fodder. Marina obviously got what Rohan meant, so she pretended to be angry, slammed the table and cursed, "I will never let those beastmen get involved in Halkadora. My family will mobilize all its forces to intercept the beastmen. My Silver Dragon Knights will also be mobilized to cooperate with your troops to stabilize the city defense." Rohan hurriedly echoed, and without hesitation, he mobilized all his troops, with the posture of dying with Halkadora. Seeing this, Marina couldn't help but glance at Rohan with a cunning look, and then looked at Higgs on the side, expecting the other party to express his attitude. "We have already put all our wealth on it. You can't hide your grievance." Looking at this pair of embarrassed men and women with calculation written all over their faces, Higgs' face was full of smiles, but in his heart he wanted to cut them into pieces. "The combined military strength of your two families is less than 1/10 of mine, so of course you are generous. If there are really hundreds of thousands of beastmen about to go south, then even if he uses all his soldiers to fight, he will probably suffer heavy losses." However, when he thought that, if he didn't do his best, Rohan and Marina would take the opportunity to impeach him, Higgs could only take the opportunity to smile and say, "Please put it down, two lords. Our army of Nagaland will never let the beastmen step into the territory of Durachi. Please rest assured." Damn it, he originally just wanted to take advantage of the situation, but he didn't expect to become the main force defending the city inexplicably. Being able to get the throne of the Lord of Terror, Higgs naturally saw the plan of Rohan and Marina, but he did not refuse the proposal to defend the city, but gladly accepted it. They can impeach him to the Lord Witch King, so he can also impeach them. As long as he can defend this city, he can actually control Halkadora, and at the same time, write a letter to warn the Lord Witch King that Marina is no longer able to defend this place, and suggest that it be transferred to him. If the plan went well, he could even take the fortress without any conflict with Rohan and Marina. Thinking of this, Higgs couldn't help but reveal a confident smile at the corner of his mouth, then patted the sword at his waist and explained, "I need to arrange the city defense. Please rest assured, everyone, I will build this fortress into an impregnable fortress. Yeah, go ahead, I believe you can defend this fortress." Looking at Higgs leaving with a smile on his face, Rohan couldn't help the smile on his face anymore, and said to Marina beside him, "Let's go, pack up the army, take your family guards out of the city." Out of the city? After hearing Rohan's request, Marina, who was still complacent, because she was slightly better than Higgs, reminded with some surprise, "We are at a disadvantage in numbers. Even if you have Silver Dragon Knights to fight, you have no chance of winning without cover. Don't worry, I have already scouted the patrols these days. There are at least more than 200 Minotaur and dozens of Chaos Giants. I won't be stupid enough to do that." Facing Marina's doubts, Rohan directly reported his amazing discovery to the other party, and then said without hiding, "Such a beastman warband is not something any of us can resist alone, even if Higgs's soldiers are twice as many." "Then you mean that I should give up Halkadora?" Hearing such a huge number, Marina couldn't help but fall into silence, because this number was indeed beyond her expectations. Even Halkadora, which once had a full garrison of 8,000, could not withstand such a swift attack. Hearing Marina's self-abandonment, Rohan rolled his eyes and pointed to the hundreds of meters high black city wall and introduced, "Please, this city wall is not for decoration. Those giants and minotaurs can't crash into the city wall at all, so they must force the city gate. As long as Higgs can block the city gate, our troops can support them from the outside, and then the pressure will be on Higgs. He dare not abandon the city at all, because once he chooses to watch the city fall and preserve his strength, then the Witch King will kill his whole family, so he can only work hard." After listening to the words, Marina understood what Rohan meant, but then asked in confusion, "But what if he can really defend the town, and then report to the Witch King that we sit back and watch our friendly forces in trouble and do nothing? Please, your people together will only have less than 2,000 people. At that time, I will let my Silver Dragon Knights participate in the battle, and your people only need to chase and escape after the battle is over." Hearing that Rohan seemed to be somewhat disdainful of her strength, Marina's beautiful face under the mask could not help but curl her lips, but she did not say much. After all, she did not have any extra soldiers at hand. Even if she recruited more than 1,000 new soldiers, it would not help. The family's only black dragon was seriously injured and has not woken up in the dragon cave. The whole family has fallen into an unprecedented low point. Seeing that Marina was a little depressed, Rohan hesitated for a moment, but still took out a bottle of rebirth pills from his arms and put it on the table and comforted her. "Although I don't know if this thing will work on the black dragon's injuries, I still suggest you try this. This is a healing pill that sells for 500 gold on the black market. Where did you get so many from? Can this thing be smuggled?" Looking at the medicine bottle that Rohan put on the table, Marina poured out a pill from the bottle and smelled it as if she had found a treasure, and then asked back with a shocked face, "Rohan, if I remember correctly, the price I agreed with American Englisher was 100 gold per pill, right?" At the beginning, Rohan had agreed with American Englisher that Rohan would provide 1,000 rebirth pills to the black market every month, and American Englisher would be responsible for selling them. Although he was kidnapped by Lilith for a year, the production of rebirth pills was so large that even the stock in American Englisher's hands could last for a year. Could it be that this grandson secretly raised the price while I was away? Chapter 175, Brotherhood. After all, because of the system panel, Rohan can easily check his tax issues anywhere. The 70,000 gold coins provided by American Englisher every month have never changed. Rohan originally thought that the other party's business was doing well, but he didn't expect that he actually raised the price behind his back. When he thought that he might lose tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of gold coins every month, Rohan felt that his lungs were about to explode. "Are you okay?" Seeing Rohan's gradually livid face, Marina, who had just mentioned it casually, instantly felt the change in the other party and couldn't help swallowing her saliva. Did he buy it from a scalper and my offer just now was too low? Marina thought she had found the reason. She looked at Rohan, whose eyes were filled with murderous intent, and said to him in a comforting way, "Actually, I think it doesn't matter if it's a little expensive. There were scalpers who raised the price of the medicine to more than 1,000 gold coins. It doesn't matter if you buy it at a higher price." Puff, a hallucination of a sharp blade piercing into the flesh came into Marina's ears. Rohan suddenly covered his chest with a heartache, muttering, 4,000 gold coins, a big loss. Damn American Englisher, he actually dared to do such a thing behind his back. After an unknown amount of time, when Marina thought Rohan had lost consciousness, he shook his head violently, came back to his senses and said, "Let's talk about this in a few days. Go back and try to cure your dragon first, and then we will leave Alcadora as soon as possible." "Okay, I won't be polite then." Seeing that Rohan was conscious, Marina didn't know what to say. She could only turn around and leave the Black Tower helplessly, heading to the military camp to prepare to gather the troops. She still had many questions in her mind, such as where they should hide outside the city, what to do with supplies, and what to do if they were discovered by the beastmen. But out of recognition of Rohan's strength and gratitude for saving her life, she didn't mind going crazy with Rohan. Anyway, there were only a few people left in her family now, and after her sister Ingorand came back, maybe the situation would get better. Half an hour later, Marina had gathered her remaining family guards and left Halcadora with more than 1,000 new recruits. Rohan also flew off the ground with the Silver Dragon Knights, constantly guiding the direction of the army in the air. On the city wall, Higgs looked expressionlessly at the retreating army of Rohan and Marina. Behind him, a scantily clad sorceress hugged his shoulders and asked, "My lord, why don't you send someone to find their location outside the city and then lead the large army of beastmen to them so that we can reap the benefits?" "No hurry, I've already sent someone to send a letter back to Nagarand. It won't be long before the family's reinforcement and warriors will be here." to kill 2 fear lords who have no military power. There is no need to waste warriors. Just say the word, and my sisters can use black magic to help you get things done. The sorceress hugged Higgs' body from behind and kept exploring. The aphrodisiac perfume on her body slowly drifted into the other's nose, making little Higgs stand up. Higgs suddenly turned around and hugged the sorceress, gestured to the guards around, and then began to undress. He slightly opened his clothes and said, "It would be boring to kill them directly. I want to play with these 2 monkeys. It would be boring if I don't. My grandpa, you don't need to play with these 2 monkeys. Send us out at night, and you can wait to collect their bodies tomorrow morning." After that, the sorceress couldn't help but hugged Higgs's face and prepared to bite it. After all, the perfume was just sprayed, and it would have an effect on her. Unexpectedly, Higgs pushed the sorceress away with a normal expression, and then while caressing her body, he looked at the silver dragon in the air with resentment and said, "Show. You must show. If you don't show off, how can you be worthy of the more than 2,000 soldiers I handed over? If you don't show off, how can I make Marina marry me unwillingly? If you don't show off, how can I become the real master of Alcadora?" Watching the silver dragon knights gradually receding backs, Higgs picked up the sorceress who had already been dazed and prepared to start working on the wall. The amber bracelet fell aside, and with the gradually dimming light, it reflected the 2 snow-white bodies stuck to each other. Outskirts, several wild harpies slowly landed on the branches, curiously looking at the 2 people fighting below. They had heard the movement here several kilometers away, and they thought they could have a good meal, but they only saw 2 male and female elves in iron armor fighting each other under the tree. The female elf held a shield and a long sword, and every attack would leave a sound of breaking air in the air. Obviously, her strength should not be underestimated. However, when facing the silver-armored male elf holding an iron stick, she was like a child and had no power to fight back. From time to time, he would be found to have a flaw and hit his butt hard. Rather than a fight, it was better to say it was a one-sided beating. After watching the show for a while, the harpies left the branches one after another. Although they were quite curious about the male elves' stick skills, they still couldn't bear the hunger in their stomachs. Food was already scarce on the Chaos Wasteland, and the inferior horned beasts that they usually hunted gathered together, so they could only eat 1 meal a day. As for preying on the 2 elves below, look at that guy with blue light all over his body. It seems that they can't afford to offend him. The 2 elves under the tree were Rohan and Marina. At this time, they had been lurking around the woods for several days, and Rohan was instructing Marina in martial arts. Be alert, don't just look at my weapon and body, but also pay attention to my steps. Rohan hit Marina's exposed, but with an iron rod, causing her to retreat in pain, and then continue to attack Rohan in shame and anger. It must be said that Marina is indeed a good seedling with good talent. She had a good foundation before, and she could even let Rohan exert 40% of his strength. In addition, she can practice magic to assist. Marina can completely take the path of practicing both magic and martial arts, and her future is limitless. Bang! Another heavy stick hit Marina's buttocks, and Marina was so angry that she hurriedly pulled away, touched her buttocks through the armor and cursed, "I now seriously doubt whether you deliberately teased me under the pretext of training me. Just tell me if you have any thoughts about me." Rohan raised his eyebrows, looked at Marina's willow eyebrows and charming almond eyes on the mask, smiled slightly and said, "Don't say whether I have thoughts about you or not. Any man will have thoughts about you." "Really?" Upon hearing this, Marina's face finally showed a hint of surprise. If she didn't know that Rohan had a human fiancé, she would probably think that Rohan was gay. It doesn't matter, even if he is bent, sister can help you straighten it. Looking at Rohan, who was slowly walking forward, Marina slowly closed her eyes, looking forward to what would happen next. Just when she thought that Rohan was going to make a passionate confession like Druki and take off his clothes, Rohan suddenly pinched her shoulders, then put his arms around her neck and said, "Let's become sworn brothers. It happens that your Alcadra is the trade hub of the entire Nagaran region. From now on, we will be the best partners, no allies." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.